American Comics. My Warhammer Simulator Chapter 421 to 440. It is said that when a person stands at a great height and looks down, the instinct in their bloodline will cause an uncontrollable fear. As a child, Strucker thoroughly enjoyed this stimulation that required no cost. This was also an important factor in his decision to join Adolf's ranks as an adult, and eventually defect to the Red Skull, Johann Schmidt, and gradually become one of the leaders of Hydra. He enjoyed the desire for power and the satisfaction of conquest that came with occupying a high position. He also enjoyed the emotional stimulation that came with controlling the lives of others, being able to kill or spare at will. If it hadn't been for those stubborn fundamentalist factions accidentally bringing back that alien bug from outer space, then in the long years after the death of Red Skull Johann Schmidt, Strucker might one day have become a Hydra spiritual leader comparable to or even surpassing the Red Skull. Baron, the enemy's combat teams have finally appeared. Judging from the tall stature and the weapons and equipment they are wearing, they are most likely the Terra Star Legion that S.H.I.E.L.D. announced was destroyed. In addition, the superhero known as Iron Man, Tony Stark, and a recently debuted energy-based superpowered individual, Beastum, have joined the battlefield and rescued many civilians. Our basic defense plan to hold a large number of hostages has completely failed. At this moment, accompanied by the thick night in the sky and the constant shining of starlight, a staff officer wearing a Hydra Black commander's uniform quickly pressed his communication headset and walked out of the ranks. He stood behind Baron Strucker, who was on the rooftop of the secret fortress, and began to report to him in a low voice. HMPH. In the next second, Baron Strucker, who had no hair on his head and whose right eye socket was covered with a red mechanical eye, suddenly snorted coldly. He subconsciously shook his mechanical right arm hidden under the black cloak. His gaze fixed on the explosions and intense gunfire rising from the city streets in the distance. Without turning his head, he sneered and said, "Pierce, that old fellow who joined Hydra halfway, is just a simple waste. His Hydra faction can't even completely control a mere shield. Therefore, I have always not believed that a group of terrorists whose number of killings and style of behavior almost surpass Hydra would be easily wiped out by a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Now it seems that my idea is undoubtedly the most correct. Moreover, I guess Madame Viper's death was 100% the Terra Star Legion doing. It's just a pity for those vehicle orders I used to win them over. Go. Mobilize all the elite combat personnel and weapons and equipment in our fortress. If the battle does not go smoothly, I will even allow you to open the confinement room of the biological experiment project and dispatch those secret weapons belonging to me, Strucker." However, as soon as Baron Strucker's voice fell, a very hesitant expression appeared on the face of the Hydra staff officer. He took a deep breath and tentatively said cautiously, "Baron, the nature of those secret weapons is too unstable, and last month, a pair of siblings participating in human experiments accidentally ran away. The people below have not been able to capture them back. If we start other biological experiment projects again, I'm afraid." Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, Baron Strucker, who had been facing away from the Hydra staff officer, suddenly moved. He moved as quickly as a cheetah hunting, and in the blink of an eye, he came in front of the other person. And he forcefully stretched out his dark mechanical right arm, and the 5 fingers made of hard metal firmly grasped the Hydra staff officer's fragile throat. "Listen to me clearly, what I said is an order, not a request. It's so sad. When that alien bug returned, you people remained silent for your own benefit. When Arnim Zola was also expelled from the core circle by the Supreme Council, you turned a blind eye. Now that the enemy's combat troops have already approached the city, you still want to be able to retreat completely. This is simply an intolerable stupidity and shame. My Hydra has fallen to the miserable point of letting the enemy reach our doorstep because of you lowly dregs." At this moment, with Baron Strucker's increasingly angry and excited emotions, the mechanical eye above his right eye socket seemed to burst out an extremely bright dark red light. At the same time, the Hydra staff officer, whose throat was firmly grasped by his mechanical right arm, suddenly weakened his struggling efforts. However, the real reason for the other person's gradual approach to death was not because of suffocation. but because the vigorous vitality in his body was being forcibly sucked away by Baron Strucker. Poof! Just a few seconds later, the withered human body completely wrapped in the Hydra Black Commander's uniform lightly fell on the rooftop floor of the secret fortress, making a soft sound. Subsequently, this withered corpse, like black, decayed wood, quickly turned into a handful of black ashes. Finally, it was completely blown away by the strands of cold night wind that kept coming. And Baron Strucker, with a blank expression on his face, didn't even look at it. He slowly turned his bald head, his cold gaze fixed on the other Hydra commanders who were deliberately standing in the shadows of the rooftop, and said in a hoarse voice, "My orders, did you hear them clearly just now? Baron, we heard them completely. We will definitely act 100% according to your orders. Hail Hydra!" Almost in unison, the Hydra commanders, shouting loudly at Baron Strucker, immediately raised one arm and performed the Hydra's fanatical military salute. Immediately afterwards, they subconsciously straightened their backs and slammed their heels together. They all ran quickly towards the stairs of the fortress rooftop, as if their butts were equipped with a power engine. However, Baron Strucker, with an indifferent expression, seemed to completely ignore the ridiculous scene in front of him. Or rather, he simply didn't care about the life or death of these subordinates. The only thing he cared about from beginning to end was himself. Perhaps even the fanatical belief in the Hydra ideology deep in his heart was ultimately just a tool that could be used. At this moment, Baron Strucker once again focused his gaze on the bottom of the fortress rooftop. He silently looked down at the dim city shrouded in the flickering lights. And at the rear of the city, the overlapping mountains hidden in the darkness. If the secret weapons sent out don't play any decisive role, and the elite soldiers under my command are all dead and wounded, then, I, who cannot escape from this place, may need to prepare an ultimate funeral to perish with all mankind. For example, loading those death spore bombs that have not yet been put into actual combat into the launch device of cruise missiles would not be a bad idea to solve the problem. Heh. As for the Terra Star Legion, if they dare to come, then let them come. If I am going to die, then I don't mind dragging you and the entire human race to watch the whole world burn. Strucker is immortal. Hail Hydra! Baron Strucker, whose mechanical eye flickered with a dark red light, slowly revealed a bloody, cruel, and cold smile from the corner of his mouth. Boom boom boom. The violent roar from the bolters almost echoed throughout the dim night sky. The Carcharodon's chapter Terminators, using the vehicles on the city streets and the alleys between the buildings for cover, continuously advanced. While advancing towards the massive hill where the Hydra's secret fortress was located, they raised their bolters and engaged in fierce firefights with the Hydra's elite warriors who were entering the city streets. At the same time, they rapidly propelled their Terminator armor, stomping hard on the ground. Chapter Master Tyberos, his running steps resembling a heavy tank, used his thick ceramite shoulder pad as a battering ram, forcefully overturning a Hydra behemoth tank from the side. Regardless of the overall combat effectiveness of this heavy tank, which was much larger than a normal tank, it at least incorporated some of the big is good design philosophy of the Warhammer universe, deserving more bolter encouragement. As for the Hydra's single-person tanks, which were almost everywhere on the city streets but had thin armor and were easily penetrated, they had already become victims of the lightning claw during Tyberos's stealthy assault. Chhchchhh. At this moment, Tyberos, abruptly raising his two lightning claws, quickly flipped the terrifying weapons in his hands. Accompanied by an extremely ear-piercing roar, the chainsword teeth located in the palms of his hands suddenly began to rotate rapidly. In the next second, the hard tank chassis, capable of withstanding repeated bombing impacts, was quickly sawed open with a large hole, completely exposing the tank crew members hidden inside the armor, their faces covered in blood. Whoosh! Just then, an armor-piercing tank shell, as thick as a bowl, suddenly streaked across the dimly lit street with flickering streetlights. Like a bolt of solid lightning, it roared towards the tall and conspicuous Tyberos. Faced with this oversized armor-piercing projectile, even the Carcharodon's chapter, clad in Terminator armor, could hardly withstand a direct hit, even if they were lucky enough to survive the injury. Limb dismemberment or even intestinal rupture would be unavoidable horrific outcomes. However, perhaps it was because of the Emperor's blessing. Or perhaps it was Tiberos's subconscious forward-leaning motion to kill the enemy while wielding the lightning claw. This terrifying armor-piercing shell directly grazed the thick ceramite shoulder pad of the Terminator armor. After carving out a tragically deep dent, it suddenly made a 90-degree turn. Then, it pierced straight through the walls of countless buildings and disappeared into the night. HMPH. At this moment, Tiberos, quickly withdrawing his lightning claw from the bloody and mangled interior of the behemoth tank, seemed to emit a low, cold snort from beneath his metal helmet. He strenuously moved the magnetic boots of his Terminator armor, using the overturned behemoth tank and the surrounding burning wrecks as simple cover. He launched another furious charge towards the Hydra behemoth tank that was adjusting its firing angle. Thump thump thump. Truth be told, the Carcharodon's chapter master Tiberos seemed to show some signs of anger. And this required countless Hydra guys to use their lives to quell his anger. Dash 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 dash. Crackle crackle, accompanied by bursts of thunderous sounds. A thick lightning bolt that suddenly streaked across the city sky swiftly descended from the sky and pierced through the fragile bodies of dozens of Hydra elite soldiers, completely ending their lives. At this moment, Thor tightly gripped Mjolnir, wrapped in dazzling electric light, in his palm. He quickly took a deep breath, trying to ease the exhaustion from summoning lightning. Then, Thor unhesitatingly swung his thunder hammer, wielding Mjolnir into a series of afterimages that were difficult to discern with the naked eye. Along the entire street, he launched a merciless low-altitude impact towards the Hydra elite soldiers who were constantly pouring out from the front. At the same time, Tony, controlling a legion of Iron Man armors to constantly block the stray bullets on the battlefield, and trying his best to drive a large number of civilians to evacuate to safe areas, abruptly changed the flight direction of his mechanical armor. He also rejoined the killing battle against the Hydra elite soldiers. CHHCHHCHH. Under the tacit cooperation of Jarvis and Tony, beams of light that quickly streaked across the air accurately took away one Hydra elite soldier after another who didn't have time to hide and cover, and successfully reduced the chances of them kidnapping civilians or causing casualties. Now, having experienced the slum battle and many fierce battles, Tony seemed to be gradually adapting to the survival rules on the battlefield. He no longer seemed to be a superhero who simply distinguished between good and evil and acted arbitrarily based on emotions. Instead, he was gradually transforming into a reasonably qualified warrior, and even no longer felt much revulsion towards killing enemies. Perhaps the current Tony Stark is taking a big step towards becoming a true human hero. Thump. The next moment, Tony, wearing the gold and red Iron Man armor, landed heavily, and too hard, heavy metal feet instantly cracked the asphalt ground below. He quickly captured the attack movements of a Hydra elite soldier through the data-assisted visor. Immediately afterwards, aided by the artificial intelligence combat system, Tony abruptly raised a metal fist. After striding forward, he forcefully punched the opponent away. "Oh, buddy, that's gotta hurt." Tony glanced at the opponent who had fallen heavily to the ground, grimacing, and couldn't help but complain. Then, he once again raised his palm, firing continuous bursts of energy beams at the Hydra elite soldiers who had raised their energy rifles. "Hey, Tony, how's the evacuation of those human civilians going?" At this moment, Thor, his entire body completely shrouded in wisps of dazzling electric light, flew back to the vicinity of the street. While strands of constantly leaping, dazzling magical lightning instantly burned a large number of Hydra elite soldiers to death. Having just landed, he did not forget to turn around and shout loudly in Tony's direction. Most of the civilians have basically been taken to safe areas by the Iron Legion. Jarvis is also scanning the vicinity to see if there are any lucky survivors left. Tony repeatedly fired beams of light from his palms. He shouted loudly at Thor, who was standing to his side, almost in a parallel diagonal line with him, without even raising his head. "Thor, watch out." Just then, accompanied by a burst of artillery warning buzzing that suddenly resounded in Tony's ears. His data-assisted visor accidentally captured an armor-piercing shell that had pierced through a large number of buildings, heavily bombarding towards Thor's back. Tony, his eyes wide open, immediately issued a warning to Thor, who was not far away. However, this shell, with its warhead tip spinning violently. The armor-piercing shell, with wisps of red energy driving its trajectory seemingly lingering on the tail of the shell, still detonated violently behind Thor's back. Boom! Thor, who had withstood an armor-piercing shell with his powerful body, was instantly completely engulfed by an extremely violent burst of explosive fire. Then, his entire person flew horizontally into a building near the street like a kicked ball. David, emergency situation. Thor may need medical attention. Repeat, Thor may need medical attention. The next moment, Tony, unhesitatingly shouting into the communication device, instantly took off from the ground. Braving a barrage of laser beams from the enemy, he quickly rushed towards the location where Thor had fallen. At the same time, in a hidden room less than 50 meters away from the battlefield, a slender fingertip was slightly raised, with wisps of scarlet energy still lingering on the knuckle of the finger. Was grabbed by a slightly rougher man's hand, forcefully interrupting the next action of the fair hand. "Wanda, what did you just do? I want to avenge my dead family." The owner of the pale hand gritted her teeth and spat out the stiff words. At this moment, the underage girl wanted to break free from her brother's restraints. But she was worried that her powerful, potentially uncontrollable power might hurt her family. In the end, she could only helplessly drop her hands. "Wanda, Tony Stark deserves to die. He must pay the price for his past arms dealing, but others are innocent. Have you forgotten the painful lesson from last time? Your abilities are tied to your emotional state, and you can't easily control them right now. Listen to me, sister. Someone is already dealing with Hydra for us. Our previous plan should also change. While the city is in chaos, the best choice is to leave Sokovia temporarily." Her white-haired brother, Pietro, grasped her pale hand in return. He earnestly comforted his sister, "Wanda. We need more time to grow and train ourselves. What does it matter if Tony Stark lives a few more years? One day, we will." Boom! Just then, Pietro's words were cut short. A wall near the two of them shattered, along with the dust scattering everywhere and the collapsing bricks and rubble. A piece of Iron Legion armor slowly revealed itself, and Jarvis's mechanical voice quickly sounded. "Please do not panic or be afraid. I am Iron Man's artificial intelligence, Jarvis. I am here to take you away from the battlefield. Please trust me, cooperating with my actions is the only way to completely ensure your safety." As soon as he finished speaking, Pietro, with one arm tightly around Wanda's shoulder, silently returned his other hand, which had been rapidly vibrating into multiple afterimages, to normal, letting it drop to his side from behind. He took a deep breath, subconsciously exchanged a glance with Wanda in his arms, and immediately shouted loudly at the mechanical armor in front of him. "Thank goodness. Someone has finally come to save us. Thank you very much, Iron Man." Buzz buzz buzz. Self-propelled machine bees with anti-gravity engines emitted a low hum as they swarmed into the sky above the city streets. They quickly fired scorching lasers, suppressing the enemy's repeated attacks. At the same time, mechanical Leviathan guards wielding roaring chainsaw swords. They were like metal monsters that had invaded a human city. They relentlessly carried out a bloody massacre of Hydra's elite soldiers. Soon after, Rourke, wearing power armor, led Iron Man David through the city streets. They quickly arrived at Thor's location. However, just as Iron Man David took out a greater panacea from the medical kit he carried with him, Thor, carefully supported by Tony as he walked out of the ruined building, also revealed his dusty and battered face to everyone present. "Thor, how are your injuries?" Rourke scanned the grimacing Thor through his helmet visor and asked in a deep voice. "Hee hee, I won't die. I'll be able to fight again after a while. We Asgardians aren't that fragile. I was just careless before, I didn't dodge." Hearing Rourke's concern, the embarrassed Thor subconsciously clenched Mjolnir in his palm and shook his head repeatedly. Immediately afterwards, Iron Man David, who had replaced the greater panacea with a panacea capsule, stepped forward. After Thor swallowed the panacea capsule, he gradually recovered and patted Tony's armor shoulder, smiling and saying, "Thanks, Tony, and David. Tisk. Thor, I should be thanking you. If you hadn't stood in front of me, that stray bullet would have exploded on me. Even if I started treatment on the spot, I'm afraid it would have been too late." Tony, who had opened his metal mask, couldn't help but reveal a look of lingering fear. Just then, Iron Man David, who was standing near the crowd, seemed to have received some important information. He shook his metal head slightly and quickly reported to Rourke. "My lord, Warband Captain Tiberius led the personal guards into the entrance of the secret fortress. They are wreaking havoc there. Taking this opportunity, Doom's forces are also launching an attack on the secret fortress from the cliff behind the hills. I estimate that Hydra's forces won't be able to resist for long." "Very good, let the remaining Smart Control Legion clear out the enemies on the city streets, and then transfer them all over there to wipe out the internal Hydra in one fell swoop." Iron Man's information made Rourke nod his metal helmet. He unhesitatingly issued the order to continue the attack. Afterwards, Rourke shifted his gaze to Tony and Thor, and said in a deep voice, "Come on, friends, let's go to the second half of the battle." Chi. A beam of scarlet light from a Hell's Hammer-type laser cannon pierced through the secret fortress's solid defenses. The incredibly hot beam, along with the entire metal bunker, completely melted the Hydra elite soldiers and large-caliber firearms hiding inside into molten slag. And as several fortress-type smart control machines continued to step forward with their massive bodies, defense forces wearing green carapace armor, armed with laser weapons, immediately emerged from the bunkers, engaging in a very fierce firefight with the Hydra elite soldiers located above the fortress. At this moment, on the rugged cliff above, Doom, with his feet suspended in midair. His dark green cloak danced incessantly in the biting night wind. Each time he waved his Doomsteel hand, a dozen Hydra elite soldiers standing on top of the fortress were heavily enveloped by hellfire summoned by witchcraft, and then completely burned to ashes. The next second, Doom quickly scanned the personnel losses of the defense forces through his visor. He lowered his metal helmet slightly, and ordered the Defense Force Company commander at the very bottom, who was leading a combat squad, to launch an attack. "Company commander of the First Company, have the demolitionists in your company follow a team of Leviathan mechs to the bottom of the fortress and install high explosives on the enemy's foundation. Blast open an entrance for our team." "Understood. Demolitionists, bring the bombs and follow me." The Defense Force Company commander looked up at Doom in midair. He unhesitatingly clenched the laser pistol in his palm. Turning his head, he shouted loudly at the Defense Force soldiers standing behind him. "For the glory of the double-headed eagle, and for Lord Doom, follow me and charge." The next moment, the nimble Defense Force Company commander led several determined-looking demolitionists and rushed out of the bunker first. They didn't even wait for the nearby Leviathan mechs to come forward to shield them from the enemy's firepower. They launched a desperate charge towards the direction of the fortress. Doom, hovering in midair, reacted quickly. His Doomsteel hand suddenly waved. Several defensive spells silently landed on the Defense Force Company commander and the demolitionists, doing his best to shield them from the enemy's firepower. Rumble. Several minutes later, along with a burst of rising explosive flames and a deafening roar that resounded across the city's sky, a huge explosion breach was completely blasted open on the thick walls of Hydra's secret fortress. "All defense forces and Smart Control Legion, listen to my command. For the glory of the double-headed eagle. For Rourke. All troops, attack!" The lightning power claws, energized by the Azure decomposition field, sliced through flesh like a hot knife through butter. They quickly embedded themselves into the body of a superpowered individual with metallic skin. Before this secret weapon of Hydra could utter a painful, scorched organ wail, Tiberius's other lightning power claw brutally tore apart the opponent's tough, metal-like body. He slightly shook his metal helmet, smeared with the enemy's viscous blood, trying to clear his blurred visor. At this moment, the interior of the Hydra fortress was littered with corpses. The completely torn and broken bodies of numerous Hydra elite soldiers were everywhere, and dark red blood had almost gathered into a river, flowing freely. And near piles of fiercely burning Hydra vehicles. 5 Astartes bodyguards, constantly wielding chain axes and chain swords, were engaged in a fierce battle with a dozen superpowered secret weapons. Aside from the most common abilities like rapid physical regeneration or complete metallization of the body, the most troublesome was a powerful superpowered individual who could manipulate magnetic fields at will. However, this seemingly irrational fellow attacked indiscriminately. The terrifying attack method, which almost formed a storm of metal fragments, did not spare even the Hydra forces present. In fact, the majority of the casualties among Hydra's elite soldiers should be attributed to him. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Just then, accompanied by a sharp sound suddenly piercing the air, a blood scythe, rapidly spinning into a green halo, brutally pierced through the metal fragment storm that had formed a small tornado. With just one strike, it completely split the superpowered individual's fragile body in two. The next second, an Astartes bodyguard in Terminator armor, covered in scars, seized the opportunity to step forward. He forcefully stomped on the opponent's entire head, ending the repeated devastation of the metal fragment storm. At the same time, Thor and Tony, soaring through the air inside the fortress, quickly joined the battlefield. Instantly, beams of repulsor energy and deafening magical lightning echoed all around. Thump thump thump. Rokas, driving his power armor, came to Tiberius's side. He gazed through his visor at the battlefield littered with corpses and said, "Not long ago, Doom's forces attacked the interior of the enemy fortress from the rear. Perhaps that's why Hydra released these superpowered individuals. I believe their morale may have collapsed, otherwise they wouldn't have released this special power that they haven't yet mastered. Primarch, these psychers have very little reason, they use their powers recklessly based entirely on instinct. If this were on our homeworld, it would be a very dangerous sign. A swift victory is the only way, otherwise troublesome chaos demons will follow." Tiberius slightly shook his metal helmet. He said to Rokas in a low voice, "So far, we haven't encountered any superpowered individuals that are completely beyond the norm. According to my memory, Terra should have many wild and powerful beings. However, the current Hydra probably can't come up with any means of turning the tables." Rokas said to Tiberius in a calm tone. Just then, his gaze suddenly turned towards Iron Man David, who was walking back from the edge of the battlefield. In the metal palm of the latter's hand, several silver metal collars, covered in fragmented flesh and blood, were swinging back and forth. Rokas, driving his power armor, stepped forward and asked Iron Man David, "David, what did you find?" "My lord, if I'm not mistaken, this should be a technological product used by Hydra to control superpowered individuals. The effect is probably to suppress the activation of superpowers. Moreover, I believe that these superpowered individuals who were turned into biological weapons were probably created using many missing children who were trafficked here as base materials." At this moment, hearing Iron Man David's words, Rokas, his thoughts racing, immediately recalled Iron Man David's series of investigations into Hydra and the Roxxon Corporation. Among them, a considerable number of missing children were purchased by the current Hydra faction, namely Baron Strucker. "David, it's too late to say anything now. Let's offer a moment of silence for the short lives of the missing children with the destruction of Hydra and the death of Baron Strucker." After a moment of silence, Rokas slightly shook his metal helmet. He turned his head and said to Iron Man David. The next moment, Rokas activated his power armor. He went straight to the side of the mangled and incomplete corpses. He casually picked up the blood scythe surrounded by green light. For the vast majority of psychers, granting them death is also for their own good. At this moment, Tiberius subconsciously uttered a famous quote from the Warhammer universe to Iron Man David. Afterward, he also activated his Terminator armor. Following Rokas, he joined the increasingly fierce battlefield. Soon after, the blood scythe in Rokas's palm brutally cleaved the last superpowered individual with rapid physical regeneration abilities to death. He stood in place and glanced at the wriggling corpse that had not completely died, and couldn't help but let out a sigh. Rokas did not reveal the true origins of these superpowered individuals, whose size was comparable to adults, to Tony and Thor, and the others. Boom boom boom. Just then, explosions and rumbles were constantly coming from inside the secret fortress. Also constantly reminding everyone present that the war in front of them had not yet ended. Thus, led by Rokas and Tiberius, the group, having reorganized their weapons and equipment, quickly launched a sustained advance towards the depths of the secret fortress. Along the way, Rokas, constantly wielding the blood scythe, and Tiberius, repeatedly sweeping with his lightning power claws, specialized in confronting one heavily armored Hydra giant tank after another. Thor and Tony were responsible for dealing with the superpowered individuals who occasionally rushed out of the passages. As for the other Astartes bodyguards, carrying chain axes and chain swords, they were single-mindedly hacking and killing the Hydra elite soldiers who showed no signs of fleeing. Soon after, the advancing group encountered the defense force troops led by Doom. Lord Rokas, an elite Hydra team, escorted by a group of superpowered individuals, has gone to the underground location of the secret fortress. The person being guarded in the middle looks like the head of Hydra, Baron Strucker. Just then, Doom, his dark green cloak floating in the air, quickly flew to the front of Rokas. He said urgently to the crowd in front of him, "I was temporarily held back by a few superpowered individuals just now and couldn't immediately take action to stop them. Moreover, several Defense Force combat squads that were sent afterward have also lost all contact, and it's likely that they've met with misfortune. Knowing where the ringleader is enough. They won't be able to escape. Doom, you continue to lead the intellectually controlled Legion and the Defense Force, plus the Astartes Vanguard, to wipe out all the Hydra soldiers in the entire secret fortress. Eradicate them completely. Thor, Tony, you stay up here for now to prevent any escaped superpowered individuals from causing greater harm to our forces. Finally, Tiberius and I will go and meet Hydra's Baron Strucker." Rokas, wearing his metal helmet, made the arrangements in an orderly manner. Everyone nodded in agreement. The next moment, he, carrying the blood scythe in his palm, unhesitatingly activated his power armor. With Tiberius, wielding dual lightning power claws, marching forward. Guided by Iron Man David's reconnaissance, the two quickly launched a final decapitation strike towards the underground location of the secret fortress. Roche had to describe it. Then the tunnels under the secret fortress were as winding and intricate as a maze. Faced with underground passages that were almost identical in overall structure, size, and even lighting brightness. If Saul were tracking, everyone would probably be lost by now. Fortunately, Roche brought Iron Man David, and the underground tunnels also had special contributions from the Defense Force Combat Squad. Their tattered corpses, pierced and torn apart by superpowers or laser beams, were the best guiding coordinates. Boom boom boom. Soon after, Roche, wearing power armor, and Tiberius, driving the Terminator armor, finally arrived at an extremely spacious underground plaza. And at the end of the underground plaza, in addition to a group of elite Hydra soldiers busily moving back and forth, there were also dozens of cruise missiles, each standing 5 or 6 stories high. "David, those cruise missiles are yours. Whether they want to launch them or detonate them on the spot, we must not let Hydra succeed." At this moment, Roche, who quickly glanced and understood the other party's intentions, immediately issued an order to Iron Man David. Subsequently, Roche and Tiberius, whose offensive movements were very tacit, did not hesitate at all. They carried the power weapons in their palms and launched a terrifying charge towards the Hydra on the plaza. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Metal shurikens in the shape of a cross were constantly condensed from the palm of a superpower user. Roche, wearing power armor, had no intention of dodging. His other palm quickly picked up the furnace heart from his waist. He unhesitatingly pulled the trigger at the large number of Hydra warriors and superpower users attacking him. Chi-chi-chi-chi. In an instant, the high-temperature tide formed by countless azure blue plasma balls almost submerged the nearby Hydra. Only a few superpower users who reacted quickly managed to dodge by relying on caution and luck. And most of the elite Hydra soldiers were instantly burned into scattered ashes by the plasma tide. At the same time, Tiberius, who charged past like a speeding train, swung his lightning power claws every time. A superpower user who tried to stop his advance was torn into a sky full of flying flesh and blood fragments. Relying on crazy offensive methods that even superpower users could hardly easily capture. Tiberius became the first ***** butcher to break through the entire underground plaza. Afterwards, Iron Man David, who took the opportunity to approach the launch control tower, quickly inserted his metal palm into it. The blue light in his eye sockets desperately flickered, and countless data streams seemed to flow inside. At this moment, Rorschach, whose magnetic boots were stepping on the ashes of the corpses, also successfully arrived at the end of the underground plaza. And behind him, there were not many enemy corpses that could be completely preserved. Pa pa pa. At this moment, a burst of dull applause suddenly came from behind everyone. Rorschach and Tiberius, holding the blood scythe, subconsciously turned their metal helmets. And within the range of their eyepieces, a bald man with a black cloak and a mechanical right arm slowly walked out of a nearby shadow with a mechanical eye. As expected of the famous Terra Star Realm Legion, even if I spent a lot of energy and time to cultivate and clone a special race, and gradually research the superpower users, they were easily harvested like ripe straw. At this moment, Baron Strucker said to Rorschach and others in a very flat tone. Also, don't let that artificial intelligence waste its efforts. Before you arrived here, I had already started the launch program. The reason why I let those subordinates pretend to be about to launch was just to give you some small hope. Oh, I forgot to tell you that all the cruise missiles are loaded with a special thing called Death Spore Bomb. It is said to be a death spore virus, but their nature is more like a fungal spore or a mythological species that likes the concept of death. Even if only one cruise missile can land and explode, the spores that drift with the wind will spread to the entire Earth. By then, boom boom boom. Baron Strucker's words were not finished. Rorschach and Tiberius, without any emotional fluctuations, unhesitatingly launched a swift charge towards the front. This made Baron Strucker slightly stunned. The calm expression on his face quickly turned into an uncontrollable emotion of anger. It's just a bunch of scum who have no respect for death. Then let you be buried with me. Along with the loud scolding from the other party's mouth. And the mechanical single eye that quickly flashed dark red light. A beam of orange-red light as bright as a brilliant flame suddenly burst out from Baron Strucker's eyes. Chi. Rorschach, who was about to approach the attack range, did not want to parry and dodge, and completely relied on the power armor to resist it. But the heavy sense of crisis from the instinct of the beast made him subconsciously raise the blood scythe in his palm, blocking the shooting path of the orange-red light beam. Zzz. The orange-red light beam, which had no heat at all, was gently blocked by the blade of the blood scythe. Like a celestial maiden scattering flowers, it quickly exploded into tiny, brilliant sparks in midair. In an instant, whether it was the Dow steel shell stained with a little brilliant spark or the surrounding ground, it actually underwent a strange phenomenon of decay as if it had experienced rapid aging. The power of death spores is more than just these. Ignorant scum. Seeing Rorschach, who was charging, subconsciously slowed down his speed. Baron Strucker couldn't help but reveal a cruel smile from the corner of his mouth. However, at this time, Rorschach, wearing a metal helmet, only glanced at the blood scythe, which showed no signs of damage. He quickly lowered a Dow steel palm and suddenly pulled out the furnace heart from his waist again. Then, Rorschach did not hesitate to pull the trigger continuously in the direction of Baron Strucker. Poo. In the next second, azure blue plasma balls shot out rapidly towards Baron Strucker, who did not have time to dodge. At the same time, Tiberius, who had arrived in front of the other party, also slammed his two magnetic boots on the ground. He unhesitatingly retracted the lightning power claws that were about to slash at Baron Strucker. Also cleared the offensive path for the plasma high-temperature tide launched by Rorschach. Hydra Wand. In the blink of an eye, Baron Strucker, who had the will to die, suddenly widened his single eye. He stared intently at the magnificent scene in front of him and couldn't help but let out his last roar. However, before the fanatical slogan belonging to Hydra ended, the extremely terrifying scorching plasma completely enveloped his entire body. Then completely evaporated the fragile human body. Crack. Along with a slight ring brought by a friction. The furnace heart in Rock's palm quickly turned a circle and was then rehung back on his waist. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Luo Sha, who had retrieved the heart of the forge, exchanged a glance with Tiberius. Both of them acted as if they had just completed a trivial task. Immediately, they propelled their power armor towards Iron Man David. Soon after, just like Baron Strucker underestimated Luo Sha and the others, Iron Man David also successfully prevented a cataclysm that could have involved the entire world, just as dozens of cruise missiles were about to ignite and launch. At this moment, Luo Sha, wearing his metal helmet, stared at the cruise missiles in front of him through his visor, and breathed a slight sigh of relief. In fact, if everything was truly beyond redemption, he still had a special means to turn the tables. That was to use the Chaos God's sacrificial ritual in the simulator to sacrifice the Death Spore bomb in front of him to Nurgle. After all, special fungi like Death Spores should be Nurgle's beloved. Of course, unless there was really no other choice, Luo Sha would rather endure the blessing threat at the end of the holy number. He was unwilling to add even a bit of power to chaos out of thin air. Fortunately, Iron Man David deserved to be a product of human Golden Age technology. Even if he was just a construction worker back then. Any technology in modern society, as long as it can connect to the internet, cannot escape his control. About an hour later, a large number of defense forces and the Intelligent Control Legion, led by Doom and others, arrived at the underground plaza. The crowd, with expressions revealing a hint of relief, began to communicate with each other. Doom reported to Luo Sha that the entire secret fortress had been completely occupied by the defense forces. Moreover, even Hydra soldiers who chose to surrender were executed on the spot. Afterward, he would also use large-scale witchcraft to screen the civilians in the city, thoroughly excavating some Hydra agents who had hidden their identities. Luo Sha, who had taken off his metal helmet, nodded slightly. He thought for a while and proposed an idea to Doom. That was to control the president of Sokovia, thereby indirectly controlling the entire Sokovia. Doom, draped in a cloak, pondered slightly. He then stated that he would talk to the other party first. If the president of Sokovia really didn't listen to advice, then charm witchcraft and other methods were waiting for him. Finally, the Defense Force Company, which was undergoing repairs, and 1/3 of the Intelligent Control Legion were left by Luo Sha in the secret fortress. They would serve as one of the defensive measures before the Death Spore bomb was transferred and Sokovia's social situation returned to normal. When the rest of the people began to evacuate in an orderly manner, Thor, with a slightly furrowed brow, suddenly approached Luo Sha. He said to Luo Sha in a solemn tone. He vaguely heard his mother, Frigga, mention these fungal species called death spores. This didn't seem to be a native product of Midgard. Only some of the cold and barren lands of Asgard would have similar special species. Thor even subconsciously guessed whether some Asgardians had also participated in some of Hydra's experimental plans. Luo Sha didn't think much about it. If Loki was still alive, then this was most likely his conspiracy. But Loki had already had his skull crushed by him personally and thrown into the cold universe. And now, King Odin's control over Asgard was gradually increasing. Even analyzing from the perspective of space and time, it may not involve any transactions or conspiracies. Thor, I believe that life will find a way out, not to mention fungal organisms like death spores. If there's a chance, I'll take you to see those mushrooms that can run, jump, in WAGGGH, and you'll understand that humans have never been the masters of this universe but the squealing fungi are. Luo Sha said indifferently. Then, he propelled his power armor and turned to leave, leaving Thor in a daze. Dash 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 dash. The sky gradually brightened, when a hint of fish belly white gradually appeared on the edge of the horizon. Most of the Sokovian civilians who had fled to the suburbs returned to the devastated city streets in fear. Their eyes scanned the broken corpses of the Hydra soldiers in horror. as well as countless scrapped vehicles that were still emitting wisps of green smoke or flames. Soon after, just as some civilians were crying and cursing because their homes or livelihoods had been completely destroyed in the fierce battle, the president of Sokovia, with a clearly heavy heart, accompanied Tony Stark, who was wearing mechanical armor, to the crowd. The latter first used a series of gentle words to try to appease the gathered people. Then, he announced a major piece of news that made everyone overjoyed to the entire population. That was that any losses suffered by the people would be fully borne by the billionaire Tony Stark and a multinational consortium company called Empire Industries. Moreover, as long as it didn't exceed a certain amount, anyone could submit a compensation application to the government department's staff. At the same time, the president also announced, Mr. Tony will invest in the entire country to help the people here gradually get rid of poverty. Just as the people were gradually beaming with joy, the president of Sokovia suddenly changed the subject and also proposed corresponding conditions to the crowd. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble or repeated investigations from international organizations, if the people wanted to obtain compensation and enjoy the subsequent economic benefits, then they must undertake a gentleman's agreement. That was to prohibit the disclosure of any information about this war. Of course, the penalty for arbitrarily leaking information was also very strict. Once the identity of the leaker was confirmed, then, in addition to the person himself, including his family and relatives, they would be completely kicked out of the compensation list and the real identity would be announced to the entire population. Even if the other party went to the legal department to file repeated complaints, no one would manage this matter. Because all compensation was a benevolent gift from a billionaire and a private consortium, rather than a duty that must be fulfilled. However, when the president of Sokovia thought that the people would not accept this condition, the cheers from the entire population gradually resounded throughout the city's sky. Compared to the long-term oppression suffered by the Hydra soldiers in the past, now, as long as they kept their mouths shut, they would live a good life. For the people here, there was no such generous way of trading. So, the president of Sokovia, who faintly sighed, quickly adjusted his mentality and put away the little thoughts of wanting to rely on the people to fight for some autonomy. Even if the Hydra entrenched here was completely wiped out. But this group of strangers who could destroy Hydra were not necessarily so amiable. These people who were in a state of revelry now would not know. The gifts from fate had already secretly marked the price. Since they had enjoyed a good life in advance, they would inevitably have to pay a corresponding price. In the streets and alleys, large numbers of people raised their arms. They continuously shouted and cheered excitedly. Away from the crowd, at a street corner, Pietro, wearing a silver hoodie and jeans, firmly grasped his sister Wanda's slender hand. They tried to hide in an inconspicuous corner where others couldn't notice them. And the sensible Wanda did not disappoint her brother's good intentions. She just pursed her thin, bloodless lips tightly. Her eyes, with faint red halos in their pupils, rapidly scanned through the crowd. Her gaze was fixed on Tony Stark, who was floating above the crowd with his faceplate open, a wide smile on his face. I'm fine, Pietro. Most of the people here are friends and neighbors who have watched us grow up. I absolutely won't lose control. Wanda, her expression tense, seemed to notice the cold sweat in her brother's palm. She subconsciously raised her head, showing him a forced smile full of comfort. I shouldn't have brought you out. I just wanted you to take one last look at our hometown, because we don't know when we'll be back next time. Pietro, with a wry smile, slightly shook his stubble-covered chin. Then, he ruffled Wanda's dark red hair under her hat with great affection, and sighed, saying, It's almost time, Wanda. In the future, we can only wander the world and depend on each other. Where do we go next? And how should we train the powers we accidentally obtained? Wanda glanced at the direction of her enemy one last time. The look in her gradually withdrawn eyes seemed to carry a trace of unresolved sorrow and confusion. Haven't we always wanted to see the most prosperous big cities in the world? I think we might be able to find qualified teachers in crowded places. How about setting our destination as New York across the ocean? Also, I heard Mr. Lai, the owner of the bakery, say that not far away, Latveria has been successfully liberated by the local resistance army. It is said that the living conditions there have greatly improved. I think our first stop should be there to take a look, at least to earn money through part-time work and save up for 2 plane or boat tickets, right? Your brother may run faster than a bullet, but I haven't grown to the point where I can carry you across the sea. Pietro pondered for a moment. He spoke to Wanda clearly and logically. But at the end, he suddenly tilted his head and grinned mischievously at his sister. Wanda widened her eyes in surprise. Then, she couldn't help but roll her eyes and subconsciously punched her brother in the stomach. Pietro, are you asking for a beating? I'm warning you, you can't beat me now. Ouch, just kidding. I won't, dear Wanda, shall we go home and pack our luggage? HMPH. Don't think I won't hold a grudge. You dared to call me fat. I'll punish you to carry me on your back when we're on the road. Tisk. Dear sister, which time when we were escaping wasn't I carrying you on my back? Ouch. Are you hitting me again? Dash 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 dash. Buzz buzz buzz. Accompanied by the violent buzzing of the vector engine and the strong airflow sweeping around. A Thunderhawk transport aircraft slowly landed on the Defense Forces landing platform. After the heavy cabin door gradually opened, Rorschach and Tiberius, wearing power armor, plus Thor, who was hitching a ride to save energy, stepped out of the cabin. As for Tony and Doom, the two of them temporarily stayed in Sokovia to handle post-war affairs. One is simply responsible for coming forward, spending money, and earning more hero popularity. One is responsible for leading the Astartes honor guard to do some shady dirty work. It can be regarded as a win-win situation to some extent. Just at this moment, with a sound of footsteps approaching from far to near. Greeting the crowd was a Defense Force logistics team carrying cleaning tools. There was also a familiar acquaintance of Rorschach. It was Zola, the surface ruler of Latveria, the female prime minister. Now, Zola had completely styled her past brown-red braids into a neat look for urban white-collar workers. In addition to a black close-fitting business suit, she even wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on her tall, fair nose. If Rorschach hadn't witnessed the ferocity of the other party in battle, he would subconsciously think that the woman in front of him was just an intellectual woman with no strength to truss a chicken. Your Excellency Rorschach, you are using Doom as a handy human machine, so the machine should occasionally take a break, right? I'm ashamed to say that even the news of his return was notified to me by the high-level generals of the Defense Force, otherwise I wouldn't even know what happened. Zola, with a stern expression, blocked the crowd with vigorous steps. She directly ignored Tiberius, who was obviously more impressive in terms of size and aura, and stared at Rorschach without fear. Rorschach, with his eyebrows slightly raised, subconsciously let out a dry laugh. He casually handed the metal helmet in his Dow steel palm to Tiberius, who was standing aside, signaling the other party to clean the armor. Then, he turned his head and asked Thor, who was planning to watch the show, to go to the conference room to wait. After all the irrelevant people had temporarily left, Rorschach, with a calm expression, said to Zola, "Long time no see, Ms. Zola. I would like to thank you here for managing the entire Latveria in an orderly manner. Even David is impressed by your governance ability and praises you." However, before Rorschach could finish his polite remarks, Zola, with a smile that was not a smile, interrupted the following words without hesitation. "Your Excellency Rorschach, please don't divert my topic. I'm asking about Doom, and I only care about him. Doom has never returned even once since he went to your Twin Islands base. Even the occasional video calls are in a hurry and he hangs up after saying a few words. Also, I would like to ask who is Redditus. Why does he always instigate Doom to ignore me?" Hearing Zola's questioning like a lumberjack's gun attack, Rorschach, squinting his eyes, subconsciously let out a sigh, and said earnestly, "To be honest, Doom has now been promoted to our Chief Technology Officer. He has countless technology businesses to develop and learn, and at the same time, he must maintain the intensity of combat training. As for Redditus, you can think of it as a noisy robot. None of its decisions count. Okay, Ms. Zola, you don't need to keep staring at me, you won. After this Hydra matter is over, I will give Doom a week's vacation, which can be regarded as a reward for your contribution to governing Latveria. How about that? At this moment, Zola patiently listened to Rohaxia's words. After the other party agreed to give Doom a vacation, her expression immediately softened, and she said to Rohaxia with a smile, "Thank you for your understanding, Your Excellency Rohaxia. For your future great cause, all of us will do our best." The brightly lit conference room. Roche, covered in bullet marks on his plasteel shell and still damp with water stains, was gulping down food rations. Not far away, Tiberius and Saul and others were also slowly eating. It's just that Saul was eating grilled meat, and Tiberius was slowly chewing on a viscous plasteel powder protein porridge. Saul was curious about this special food, but when he learned that it was mixed with metal powder ground from plasteel, his eyes were filled with admiration when he occasionally looked at Tiberius and Roche. Soon after, everyone quickly finished eating, and Iron Man David, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately stepped forward. With the slight movement of raising a metal palm, Tony's big face suddenly appeared on a huge screen on the wall of the conference room. "Good afternoon, everyone, I'm currently in flight. In order not to delay the strategic meeting with everyone, I will temporarily participate via video." Tony, whose picture occasionally shook a few times, said to everyone with a smile. "Well, except for Doom, who is indeed too busy to get away for the time being, everyone else is here." Roche, squinting his eyes, glanced around at everyone and said in a calm tone, "Buzz buzz buzz." The next moment, with a gesture from Roche to Iron Man David. Iron Man David, with blue light flashing in his eyes, instantly projected a semi-transparent three-dimensional world map to the center of the conference room and quickly adjusted the latitude and longitude on it. In just a few seconds, a location in the central Pacific Ocean. A large island with an overall state resembling a twisted skull was completely presented in front of everyone. Hydra Island, also jokingly called Red Skull Island by Hydra insiders, was originally a submarine factory secretly developed during World War II. Later, it became the location of the Hydra Supreme Council, and now it is also the hiding place of the alien, Hive. Iron Man David projected a three-dimensional map of Hydra Island from his eyes, while slowly introducing it to everyone present and Tony on the screen. Hydra Island's defense system is very strict. Just excavating Arnim Zola's memories before he was exiled, we have already discovered a considerable number of ground-armored units, as well as anti-aircraft firepower units that cooperate in combat, and some underwater units equipped with Hydra submarines. Moreover, it is said that Hive has also brought some alien technology to Hydra. The giant serpentine mechanical creation that my lord once saw as one of the ultimate products of alien technology. That is to say, if there are no unexpected circumstances, we may face several to a dozen huge mechanical creations. As for the specific number of people on the entire Hydra Island, I guess, including logistics personnel, it should be no less than 10,000. At this moment, everyone who had just finished listening to Iron Man David's introduction subconsciously fell into contemplation. Even Tony on the screen frowned slightly. I have to say, the geographical location of Hydra Island is too tricky. Moreover, the transportation capacity of the attacking troops is a great test. Facing warships, the opponent has submarine units. Facing flying vehicles, the opponent's anti-aircraft firepower is not vegetarian either. If Hydra Island were closer to the land, Roche could mobilize a large number of ground troops. But now, they must think of another way. If we need warships, whether we temporarily purchase them from arms companies or pilfer them from other countries' ports, it would be a losing proposition. Everyone, I suddenly have a bold idea. Since our purpose is to eliminate the enemies on the island, why not directly use large-scale destructive weapons? Hydra Island is located in the center of the Pacific Ocean. There are no innocent civilians or other countries around the island. Therefore, the Von Dyne catalyst, which had miraculous effects in the slums before, or a medium-yield nuclear bomb, should be a good solution, right? At this moment, Roche, whose thoughts were racing, suddenly glanced at everyone. Then, he said thoughtfully, The next moment, Roche's bold proposal immediately attracted everyone's attention. Tiberius, with a pale face, remained expressionless. But he should be one of the people who most agree with the Primarch's proposal. Saul, with his arms crossed, didn't know what the Von Dyne catalyst was. However, he still knew the power of the slum massacre and nuclear bombs. Therefore, Saul was very cautious and did not choose to speak. For a time, everyone seemed to fall into an extremely strange silence. And at this moment, it was Tony, with a serious expression, who was the first to recover from Roche's bold proposal. He took a deep breath and said to everyone, "I agree with Roche's proposal. Whether it is realistic factors or the geographical environment, the restrictions on us are too great. Instead of spending a lot of effort to mobilize a large number of combat personnel and paying a huge price in casualties to capture Hydra Island, it is better to burn them to ashes. Of course, I think nuclear bombs are still too shocking, and the pollution of radioactive materials is easy to cause unnecessary international disputes and bring more trouble. A large-scale firestorm catalyst is a good choice. Even if we can't burn them to death in the end, Roche's mind-controlled legion and my Iron Legion can enter the field in a harsh combat environment to clean up the remaining Hydra. In short, I vote in favor of this plan." At this moment, with Tony's words falling, Saul, who seemed to have hesitated for a long time, also nodded heavily in Roche's direction. So, everyone present, including Tiberius, all unanimously agreed to Roche's plan. Next, the focus of the task will temporarily fall on Reditus and Tony. About an hour later, Tony and his Iron Legion landed one by one on the Defense Force Base's landing platform. And Iron Man David also notified Reditus, who was far away at the Gemini Island base. Let him carry a large amount of promethium and ingredients for manufacturing the Firestorm catalyst to the Defense Force base. As time passed, 2 Thunderhawk transport aircraft, which had been temporarily equipped with the cogitator system. The self-controlled aircraft slowly landed on the landing platform. After Reditus, driving the anti-gravity engine, wobbled out of the cabin. A servo skull that could run, fly, and curse people rudely really shocked many Defense Force soldiers. Even though their spiritual leader is actually a sorcery master far beyond common sense. Roche and Tony and others were already used to it. And Saul had heard of Reditus's existence, although he had never seen him in person. But he was not surprised. Soon after, Reditus, who met and greeted Roche, was constantly urged by Tony. Immediately found a relatively secluded location on the base. Then, the two began to carefully configure the Firestorm catalyst. Buzz buzz buzz. Accompanied by the overlapping roar of pairs of vector engines. 13 Thunderhawk transports quickly rose from the landing platform in succession. Until the massive fuselage, repainted in light blue, slowly disappeared into the depths of the thin clouds. The lead aircraft, piloted by Iron Man David, quickly turned its nose, leading the entire flight formation towards the intended destination. Counting the Thunderhawk transport that Natasha had flown away with earlier. And the last Valkyrie, specially reserved for Doom's rapid maneuvers. These 13 flying vehicles were all the aerial power that Roche could muster. As for more Thunderhawk transports, they were still waiting for assembly and debugging on the assembly line of the forge on the Sun's Isle. And in the current flight formation, besides the 3 Thunderhawk transports specifically used to load the Firestorm catalyst, the other flying vehicles were filled with 150 clawed fiend machine guards, almost armed to the tips of their tentacles. And 50 Auto-Bees carrying laser weapons and melta-bombs. These mind-controlled legions would be the killing tools specifically responsible for clearing the remaining survivors on the battlefield after the terrifying fiery storm gradually subsided. At the same time, Roche, wearing power armor, as well as lightning power claw, and Tiberius, whose Terminator armor never left his side. Plus Thor and Tony. These 4 living people formed the Hydra destruction squad responsible for the death from above. At this moment, inside the Thunderhawk transport piloted by Iron Man David, the people sitting in the dim cabin seemed to have no interest in talking. And near the edge of a seat closest to the cockpit entrance, Tony, with his metal faceplate open, sat there with his legs crossed. He occasionally issued simple commands, instructing Jarvis to constantly adjust the Iron Legion, which was always following far behind the flight formation, to prevent this important force from getting lost. And in the other cabin seats not far from him, Thor, with a solemn expression, kept his eyes tightly closed. He leaned against the metal back of the chair with his limbs relaxed. The rhythm of his breathing seemed very long and steady. Mjolnir, the surface of the hammer occasionally flashing with a faint metallic luster, was casually placed on the seat next to him. Thor even thoughtfully fastened a seat belt for it. Looking at it, only the slender leather strap at the end of the handle occasionally swayed a few times with the subtle vibrations transmitted back and forth in the cabin. Like a naughty child who has long been under the control of his parents. At the same time, even sitting in the cabin seat, Tiberius, whose physique was much taller than normal people, did not move at all. He remained quietly in place like a cold metal statue. Every part of his body seemed to exude a terrifying aura that appeared and disappeared from time to time. Because Tiberius had already put on his metal helmet. Therefore, no one knew whether he had entered a state of contemplation, or had fallen into a brief slumber. Crack, accompanied by a soft sound from the slight friction of the ceramite outer shell. Roche, with an indifferent expression, checked the furnace heart in his palm. Then casually put it back on the side of his power armor. He turned his gaze and glanced at the blood scythe inserted in the gap of the seat. The blade was surrounded by green light, then he slowly withdrew his gaze. Just then, Roche suddenly took a deep breath. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and closed his eyes slightly, activating the ganglia inside his brain to take turns resting. Dash 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 dash. Boom boom boom. As time passed, Roche, who was in a state of slumber, suddenly opened his eyes. He was stimulated by a sudden bump and shake that triggered his extremely sensitive combat nerves, thereby interrupting his rest time. David, what's the situation? Have we reached our destination? Have we encountered enemy anti-air fire? Roche quickly glanced around the inside of the cabin, and asked in a deep voice towards the cockpit without hesitation. Sorry, my lord, a large-scale superstorm is brewing over the Pacific Ocean right now. This is extreme weather that we did not anticipate in our plan. As for the destination, according to the coordinate information, we are now about 40 nautical miles away from Hydra Island. And according to my judgment, if nothing unexpected happens, the weather conditions there will not be much better than here. A mechanical voice from Iron Man David quickly echoed in the dimly lit cabin, and instantly transmitted to everyone's ears. At this moment, apart from Roche and Tiberius, who narrowed their eyes as if indifferent to this, Thor, who had been keeping his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyelids. Even one of his palms subconsciously grasped Mjolnir, which was placed on the seat next to him. Hey, Thor, as the Asgardian god of thunder, can you use your magical powers to dispel this superstorm? Following that, Tony, frowning slightly, also activated his mechanical armor and stood up from the seat. He stepped forward to Thor and leaned down to ask him in a low voice. Tony, I've told you before, I'm just the god of thunder, not some god of storms or god of rain. Besides, haven't you noticed? Such a large-scale superstorm, I'm afraid only my father, the god King Odin, can come here to dispel it with a wave of his hand, right? Of course, there is also good news, such as in this kind of bad weather, my lightning magic will also increase a lot in power. Thor, with a helpless expression on his face, took a deep breath. He explained to Tony in front of him with a heavy heart. Friends, it doesn't matter, even if it rains explosive shells from the sky, we must continue to fight, let alone just some bearable small storms and rain. A ceramite palm gently reached out. His palm tightly grasped the metal handle of the blood scythe. Roche, narrowing his eyes, turned his head to stare at Tony's armored back, and continued in a calm tone. Tony, do you think this kind of extreme weather could have an adverse effect on the firestorm catalyst? If we only carried one canister of catalyst, then there would be some impact more or less. But this time we manufactured 3 canisters at once, and the concentration of the catalyst may be even better than last time, because whether it is the number of times the materials are purified or the time the catalyst reacts is enough. Therefore, I can guarantee to you with my scientific knowledge that there will definitely be no unforeseen problems. At this moment, Tony, wearing mechanical armor, slowly turned around. He raised his chin slightly, his eyes fixed on Roche in front, and affirmed in an assertive tone. Since that's the case, then I have nothing to worry about. Tony, let your Iron Legion prepare to carry a canister of catalyst, and act according to the plan we formulated earlier. You need to lead the Iron Legion to approach Hydra Island from other directions, and then choose a suitable place to drop it. If there are unexpected situations during the transportation process, then you can adapt accordingly. But the core requirement is always only one point. That is, don't lose this gift that we sent to Hydra. Roche, holding the blood scythe, slowly got up from the seat, driving the power armor. His gaze stared straight into Tony's eyes, and he said solemnly, dash 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 dash. Pitter patter. Icy raindrops the size of beans were mixed with the howling gale, constantly rubbing against the metal outer shell of the Thunderhawk transport, vaguely making a squeaking, ear-piercing sound. Squeak. Accompanied by the gradually opening metal door at the rear of the belly, a burst of violent hurricane wrapped in a large amount of rain suddenly poured into the cabin interior. At this moment, Tony, wearing mechanical armor, suddenly rushed forward. His whole person instantly leapt into the air, completely presenting a free-falling posture, and quickly fell heavily towards the turbulent, pitch-black sea surface. Chi. In an instant, beams of energy light from the thrusters suddenly lit up in the dark sky above the sea. Then quickly pushed Tony's mechanical armor, flipping and flying towards another Thunderhawk transport not far away that had just opened the rear door of the cabin. Dozens of seconds later, a dozen sets of mechanical armor controlled by Jarvis also successfully joined Tony's delivery team. They jointly guarded a canister of firestorm catalyst, and quickly disappeared into the thick night, buffeted by wind and rain. At the same time, Roche, wearing a metal helmet, was still standing in front of the open cabin door, welcoming the baptism from countless wind and rain. His gaze subconsciously moved from a blurry, gloomy rainy night, gradually looking down towards the pitch-black ocean that seemed bottomless. In a trance, Roche, who vaguely stimulated his beastly instincts, couldn't help but take a deep breath. With his two hearts beating slowly, he seemed to completely immerse his consciousness into the terrifying ocean in front of him. At this moment, he seemed to clearly sense those huge, sea monsters, lurking beneath the icy seawater. Squeak. It wasn't until the metal door of the cabin was closed again by Iron Man David that Roche, who was slightly distracted, slowly withdrew his gaze. This damn weather actually made me subconsciously think of the storm sea on Fenris, although there are no giant sea monsters that can swallow ships in the oceans of the homeland. Hiss, is there really none? Roche, wearing power armor, sat back in the cabin seat thoughtfully. His mind was full of thoughts, and he even ignored Tiberius's silent gaze and Thor's questioning gaze. However, at this time, a mechanical voice from Iron Man David also made Roche immediately put aside any thoughts in his brain other than fighting, and completely devoted himself to the combat state. My lord, we are about to enter the area 15 nautical miles around Hydra Island. Our flight formation needs to gradually climb in altitude. If we encounter anti-aircraft fire from the enemy in advance, then my only suggestion is to grab the sturdy handles near the seats and don't be thrown out by my superhuman driving skills. The overall shape of the Hydra Island, if viewed from a high altitude, then it truly resembles a skull half submerged by countless seawater. This is also one of the reasons why the Hydra chose this place as an important base. After all, their leader at that time was still Red Skull. Of course, more factors are because this place is isolated overseas, and the terrain is dangerous, easy to defend and difficult to attack. Especially after the continuous operation of Hydra in recent decades. It has completely turned Hydra Island into a steel hedgehog that no country or organization dares to provoke easily. Of course, right now, this steel hedgehog of Hydra is about to be punched hard from the sky. Chi. Just below the layers of heavy dark clouds. In the swaying kilometer-high altitude, countless thruster lights from the Iron Legion flickered vaguely. At this moment, they have successfully brought a can of firestorm catalyst to the sky above Hydra Island in advance. DDD. Inside the mechanical armor, Tony instantly used the scanning program on the auxiliary mask to quickly search for those high-value buildings on Hydra Island. For example, conspicuous buildings such as suspected ammunition depots or hangar platforms. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, accompanied by the launching firelight like stars twinkling between the ground. One by one, Hydra anti-aircraft missiles produced by Stark Industries, but painted with Hydra patterns, quickly cut through the dark night sky and heavy rain curtain like a celestial maiden scattering flowers. Suddenly, they rushed towards the Iron Legion standing below the heavy dark clouds. This is impossible. How did Hydra see us with the naked eye? Didn't David shield their radar equipment signals in advance? Tony, who subconsciously asked the question, unhesitatingly increased the forward power of the foot thrusters. His whole person fell rapidly like a metal sword piercing through the heavy rain curtain, rushing head-on towards those Hydra anti-aircraft missiles gradually rising into the air. Puff puff puff. At the same time, as the distance between the two sides continued to close. One by one, extremely hot and brilliantly shining flares continuously spewed out violently from behind the metal spine of Tony's mechanical armor. He tried to use this to induce some Hydra anti-aircraft missiles to deflect their flight direction. Sir, the enemy seems to be using more than just Earth technology, so Professor David was unable to completely shield the other party's detection channels. Please be extra careful. Even if he heard the cautious reminder from Jarvis in his ears, it didn't make the focused Tony feel much at ease. His whole person kept adjusting the flight dynamics of the mechanical armor like a flower-piercing butterfly. At the same time, the impact beams repeatedly blasted outward from the two mechanical palms also firmly locked onto a greater number of Hydra anti-aircraft missiles. Rumble. In an instant, a considerable number of Hydra anti-aircraft missiles were guided and deceived by the constantly falling flares. While changing the direction of flight, a large-scale explosion immediately occurred. Subsequently, beams of impact light penetrating the heavy rain curtain also landed one after another on the metal shells of the anti-aircraft missiles, completely detonating all of the Hydra anti-aircraft missiles. Jarvis, you completely take over the authority to control the Iron Legion. Don't look for high-value building targets, detonate the catalyst for me immediately before the next batch of anti-aircraft missiles arrives. At this moment, Tony, who quickly captured more ground movements on Hydra Island through the auxiliary mask. He quickly changed the battle plan and issued an attack order to Jarvis without hesitation. Almost at the same time, several mechanical armor thrusters from the Iron Legion shone brightly. Like steel soldiers firmly executing orders, they quickly pushed the firestorm catalyst to continue flying towards the sky above Hydra Island. And just as the next wave of anti-aircraft missiles from Hydra Island, as well as the large-caliber ammunition from a large number of anti-aircraft guns, were about to rise into the air. Rumble, accompanied by a muffled roar that suddenly resounded throughout the dark night sky. A super-large blue flame flower, like a blooming chrysanthemum, suddenly appeared in the sky above Hydra Island. Immediately afterwards, wisps of burning florets mixed in the rain curtain quickly fell heavily towards the ground, like a meteor shower. At this moment, even though the firestorm catalyst was created by Tony himself, and he had already witnessed the same magnificent scene in the past, but Tony still felt a little heartfelt shock at this beautiful yet extremely deadly weapon of destruction. Bang bang bang. However, in the moment when Tony was slightly distracted, one by one, large-caliber anti-aircraft shells from the ground anti-aircraft fire took the opportunity to bombard the surroundings of the mechanical armor, also stimulating countless flickering explosions of fire. A very harsh buzzing warning and Jarvis's urgent warning suddenly sounded in Tony's ears. He quickly manipulated the mechanical armor to unfold flexible flight, intending to carry out an emergency evasive maneuver. Rumble. The next second, a large-caliber anti-aircraft shell that exploded near the foot thruster of the mechanical armor almost instantly damaged the already weak defense of the thruster system. Also caused Tony's mechanical armor to temporarily lose any flight ability. Along with him, his whole person suddenly rolled and fell downwards. Jarvis. Immediately send a spare armor from the Iron Legion over here. Quick, quick, quick. At this moment, Tony, dizzy and biting his teeth, stubbornly endured the intense heartbeat that was about to jump out of his chest. He shouted loudly into the communication device with a sharp voice. Rumble. In the flash of lightning, Tony seemed to accidentally see a dazzling lightning bolt tearing through most of the gloomy cloud layer in his dizzying vision. Immediately afterwards, accompanied by the sound of tearing through the heavy rain curtain, a tall figure wrapped in wisps of electric light suddenly rushed towards Tony, who was in free fall. Subsequently, the other party quickly stretched out a huge palm and firmly grabbed Tony's rolling and falling mechanical armor. Hey, Tony, miss me. At this moment, Thor held the electrically shining Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, tightly in his palm. Like a god descending from the sky, he quickly reversed the direction of flight while carrying the mechanical armor. However, before Tony, who had not yet recovered, could breathe a sigh of relief, he immediately noticed through the not yet invalid auxiliary mask. Raptor transport planes, flexibly dodging Hydra anti-aircraft fire, also penetrated the heavy rain curtain and successfully arrived in the sky above Hydra Island. Soon after, the other 2 cans of Firestorm catalyst were quickly pushed out of the belly of the Raptor transport plane's cabin. Then they quickly bloomed towards Hydra Island, which was burning even the ground. Oh yeah, Tony, who had just experienced a thrilling experience, subconsciously waved the metal arm of the mechanical armor. He couldn't help but let out an extremely excited shout from his mouth. Immediately afterwards, Tony, who immediately realized that his emotions were somewhat out of control, instantly closed his mouth tightly. Even though their enemy is Hydra, a heretic among humans. But facing a large number of lost lives is ultimately not something a hero or an ordinary person should celebrate aloud. At this moment, the superimposed burst of 3 cans of Firestorm catalyst finally exerted their terrifying effect. Just on the rugged ground of the entire Hydra Island, even those rocky hills that were accidentally attached to the catalyst burned violently. In the depths of the raging blue sea of fire, one by one, the elite Hydra soldiers who did not have time to hide and escape almost instantly became firewood for the terrifying flames. While they quickly turned into handfuls of ashes, they also continued to add bricks and tiles for the peace of the entire world. And as time slowly passed, due to the excessive temperature difference between the ground and the sky, a large number of raindrops were instantly evaporated into more steam and returned to the heavy dark clouds. And the hurricane, which was becoming more and more terrifying, also accelerated the continuous spread of the blue sea of fire. One by one, the blue flames, as if possessing life, swelled and burned once again. Finally, they completely formed flame tornadoes of varying sizes, but with incredibly amazing visual effects, violently sweeping everything on Hydra Island. Whether it is natural forests and rocks or purely man-made buildings, any substance existing here seems unable to withstand this terrifying high temperature and the harsh environment of falling into a vacuum state. Even many elite Hydra soldiers who had hidden in underground buildings in advance were baked into cooked people in batches. Or, because of the lack of air, they fell into the extremely painful death throes before suffocation. Boom, boom, boom. As the temperature continued to rise, the hidden ammunition depots, almost all over Hydra Island, also experienced continuous explosions and roars because they could not withstand the roasting. It was as if they had suffered a ground bombing that they should not have suffered. Soon after, those Raptor transport planes still flying repeatedly around the waters surrounding Hydra Island seemed to have once again discovered some abnormal situations. Just below the turbulent and stormy sea surface, 7 or 8 Hydra submarines that had just been started were slowly diving into the depths of the ocean. And this is obviously because the personnel of Hydra, due to the superposition of various lucky factors, successfully avoided the devastating blow from the Firestorm catalyst. So, before Sha Luo received the information and issued an order, the metal doors of the cabin belly of one transport plane after another slowly opened. The next second, one by one, the Aeotian Guardian with winding and twisting serpentine bodies, especially suitable for naval warfare, carried a chainsaw sword in each hand, and crashed heavily towards the undulating sea surface like cannonballs. These intellectually controlled legions that are not afraid of sacrifice. will bring even more terrifying ways of death to those hydras who are trying to escape the wrath of heaven. For example, being drowned and crushed to death by countless cold seawater. Or, accompanied by the huge metal coffin that has completely lost power. Forcibly sink into the dark seabed hundreds of meters deep, becoming a nearly eternal decaying wreck. Thank you for your support. Thump, thump, thump. A large number of Owl's monster machine guards entering the water were like smart torpedoes. They aggressively crashed into the metal hull of the Hydra submarine, making extremely dull collision sounds. Then, the Owl's monster machine guards either used the sharp serrations of their chainswords to repeatedly cut, or they forcefully inserted mechanical tentacles into the interior of the submarine, violently tearing at the hull structure. Before long, the 7 or 8 Hydra submarines that had lucky escaped were almost all destroyed. Either they were blown into several pieces of wreckage by sudden internal explosions, or, after the internal structure was almost completely destroyed, they quickly sank into the cold, deep abyss of the sea. Thus, after everyone's unremitting efforts, not a single Hydra was able to successfully escape the Hydra Island, which was now engulfed in flames. Approximately 5 hours later, the terrifying firestorm that enveloped the entire Hydra Island gradually weakened, and the 13 Thunderhawk transport planes, in order to save fuel for their return to base, had to land on several edge areas where the flames had just been extinguished and there was basically nothing left to burn, braving the still unscattered high temperatures. As soon as Rourke and the others stepped out of the cabin, their first foot sank deeply into the scorching ground covered with a foot of ash, splashing up a large amount of slowly drifting, fine smoke. Soon after, swarms of automatic machine bees quickly flew out of the transport plane's cabin, repeatedly searching the ground of the entire Hydra Island. And as the fire on the island weakened once again, the heavy rain curtain that had originally been evaporated by the high temperature finally had a chance to descend. Countless raindrops poured down rapidly on the smoke-filled Hydra Island. Half an hour later, the automatic machine bees, having explored the barren surface, finally found an underground base entrance that had been melted and deformed by the high temperature. Rourke, driving his power armor, easily swung the blood scythe a few times, and directly split open the metal wreckage door that had just solidified. Subsequently, Tiberius, wearing Terminator armor, took the lead and walked into the still radiating, pitch-black base. Owl's monster machine guards and automatic machine bees also followed his steady pace, gradually delving deeper inside. Rourke and the others entered without hesitation, leaving only a portion of the Owl's monster machine guards to guard the Thunderhawk transport planes, protecting the Defense Force pilots. Along the way, the group unexpectedly saw a large number of Hydra elite soldiers who had lost their lives due to high temperature and suffocation. They lay painfully in the base's corridors or rooms, without any sound. A dozen minutes later, upon reaching a spacious plaza, the group immediately saw a large number of Hydra vehicles that had not yet been deployed. As well as, in the central location of the plaza, several snake-shaped mechanical creations, each 3 meters tall, over 15 meters long, and covered in silvery white plating. And directly above the head of one of the snake-shaped mechanical creations, a humanoid worm aggregate, kneeling there with one knee and one hand subconsciously reaching towards the sky, was motionlessly presented within everyone's line of sight. If Rourke wasn't mistaken, then this alien species, whose entire worm body had completely matured due to the terrifying high temperature, should be the master of the Hydra Supreme Council, the alien hive mind. My lord, this guy is completely dead. Although its overall structure is completely different from humans, its basic needs are still similar, that is to say, it still cannot withstand extreme high temperatures and suffocating environments as a carbon-based life form. Perhaps a vacuum environment for a short period of time could barely allow it to survive, however, the catalyst burned for too long. By the time it vaguely realized something was wrong and wanted to manipulate the snake-shaped mechanical creations to completely rush out of the underground base, it was already too late. Iron Man David, with blue light flickering in his eye sockets, first scanned the alien hive mind, which had a similar appearance to the slant. Then, he slightly shook his metal head and turned to say to Rourke. And Rourke, who remained silent, simply nodded, not saying much. He seemed to have expected this situation. Huh, dead. I thought we would still need to fight hundreds of rounds with the other side, at least that's how most superhero movies play it out. The next moment, Tony, unable to resist, widened his eyes and subconsciously complained. However, Thor, who was standing beside him, wasn't surprised, grinning and saying, "Tony, the firestorm catalyst was created by you personally, you should be the clearest about the power and effect of that thing." Chi. Just at this moment, before Thor could finish speaking, the heart of the forge in Rourke's palm rapidly ejected a large number of scorching plasma balls from the muzzle. Immediately afterwards, the alien hive mind's corpse, along with the metal shell of part of the snake-shaped machine, was completely evaporated by the azure plasma. Perhaps noticing the gazes cast over by everyone, Rourke, calmly retracting the heart of the forge, said without even lifting his head, "Better to be careful, just preventing the other side from pulling a zombie trick again." Hearing Rourke's words, the group exchanged glances with each other. They didn't really mind Rourke's actions, after all, being careful and cautious wasn't a mistake. Soon after, Iron Man David led the Owl's monster machine guards to explore the entire underground base. He wanted to see if he could find more alien technology left behind by the Hydra or the alien hive mind. And Rourke also began discussing with Tony and Thor how to deal with the remaining Hydra faction. However, this time, Rourke's idea of leading Tiberius and the Astartes honor guard to launch a surprise attack didn't receive strong support from Tony and the others. The reason Tony gave wasn't complicated either. Firstly, the Hydra and SHIELD personnel in North America were inextricably intertwined. It was temporarily impossible to distinguish who were the good guys and the bad guys. Moreover, the leader of this Hydra faction, Alexander, held a high position in the United Nations. An overly blatant decapitation operation could easily lead to unnecessary international disputes. Even if Rourke didn't care much about this, he still had to consider the difficulties of his friends to some extent. Secondly, Rogers was in the process of cleaning up the many hidden dangers within SHIELD. The previous joint actions of Tony and Thor were helping to clean up the Hydra members who had been identified. If nothing unexpected happened, more joint actions would continue to reduce Hydra's combat personnel, gradually weakening their sphere of influence. Thus, Rourke, with his arms crossed in front of his chest, didn't say much. He couldn't directly tell the two people in front of him that if the timing was right, SHIELD would also be completely uprooted like Hydra, right? So, when Tony solemnly promised that he would join forces with Rogers and Thor to very discreetly deal with the last Hydra leader, Alexander, and clean up Hydra's combat personnel as soon as possible, Rourke, narrowing his eyes inside his helmet, also chose to believe the other party's words. Thus, apart from the North American continent, Hydra, which had once been spread all over the world, had been basically cleaned up by Rourke. Even if there were still a few small fries left, they were no longer a threat. In fact, Roche vaguely guessed Tony's little thoughts. It was probably the tragic scene of the destruction of the Hydra Island. And the same experience of creating the firestorm catalyst once again stimulated the other party's fragile heart, causing the other party to re-experience some post-traumatic stress disorder-like situations. Or perhaps the successive large-scale battle scenes also made Tony worry that similar situations would happen in his hometown city. However, since Tony, as a member of the Inquisition, had made a corresponding commitment, Roche was too lazy to care about how they would deal with the last Hydra faction. If the other party really couldn't handle it, it would just be another bloody massacre. Dash 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 dash. Not long after, the group who were about to evacuate temporarily left a team of Clawed Fiend mech guards to guard Hydra Island. If there were no accidents, the re-established Hydra Island would also become one of Rock's branch bases. Of course, the name of the island needed to be changed. And after the group returned to the Defense Force base, Tony and Thor bid farewell to Roche one after another, and gradually left the area. Roche and Tiberius stayed in place and waited for a while. After Doom, who had finished dealing with many matters in Sokovia, also returned. Roche very skillfully gave the other party a week's vacation. Then, he led Tiberius and the Astartes honor guard back to the snowy Twin Islands base. Only at this time did Roche belatedly remember. Tiberius and the others still had nearly a week of free time before returning to their hometown, the Gulstars region. So, he ordered Iron Man David to start preparing the various supplies that the Carcharodons would need to take back directly. At the same time, Roche, who had been thinking about it for a long time, cautiously inquired to Tiberius. As for the specific central idea of this conversation, Roche wanted to find out whether the other party was willing to continue fighting with him for a period of time. And Tiberius nodded in agreement without hesitation, and told Roche in a low voice. The previous battles were just a simple warm-up for the Carcharodons. If the Primarch had any need for them, then bring it on. Faced with such a direct answer from the Carcharodons' chapter master, Roche simply told the other party frankly about part of his responsibilities. That was that he could use the Pharos beacon and the Emperor's blessing to provide support to different battlefields at different times in the Imperium. Hearing this, Tiberius didn't seem too surprised. He paused slightly for a moment, and hesitantly asked Roche if he had ever seen the Primarch Corax. Roche told the other party without hesitation. He had already fought side by side with the Primarch Corax. Moreover, whether it was the Loyalist Primarch or the Traitor Primarch, he had already seen them several times. Dash 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 dash. Not long after, Roche, who had changed into 6-armed Terminator armor, led Tiberius, who had inspected his power armor, and the Astartes honor guard to the depths of the base once again. And Tiberius, in addition to the lightning claws held in his ceramite hands. There was also a phase blade with green light lingering behind the power pack. This was a proof of acceptance that Roche gave to the Carcharodons chapter. It was also a testament to the continued cooperation between the two sides. As for the Astartes honor guard, new storm bolters and a large amount of bolter ammunition were carried on their bodies. After arriving at the circular plaza, everyone knelt on one knee in front of the Emperor's statue in unison, silently completing their prayers. Then, Roche opened the simulator without hesitation, and quickly selected a prayer support with a success rate of only over 30%. Chi. The next second, accompanied by the gradual opening and expansion of a spatial rift. Roche, Tiberius, and the Astartes honor guard returned to the Warhammer universe for the first time. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In an instant, the tall figures of everyone quickly disappeared on the circular plaza. And about 10 hours later, Roche, whose 6-armed Terminator armor was covered with bolter marks, led Tiberius, whose ceramite shell was also scarred, and the Astartes honor guard to return successfully. Their support mission this time was to go to an Imperial rogue trader fleet hijacked by a Chaos Astartes warband. And it took half a month to completely annihilate this Chaos Astartes warband that always refused to reveal its name, and only had more than 40 people. However, Roche also judged through their combat style, which was good at ranged attacks, and the heavily mechanically modified body structure, that they should be one of the sons of the traitor Primarch Perturabo, a group of stragglers who left the Iron Warriors warband. That was, Roche and Tiberius, plus the Astartes honor guard, had enough powerful combat power. Otherwise, ordinary Astartes combat squads would probably find it difficult to deal with this group of heretical heretics who advocated killing efficiency. At this moment, Roche, standing on the circular plaza, once again obtained a thrown gelt. He casually showed it to Tiberius next to him, and explained that this was a reward from the Emperor. Tiberius, who lowered his head slightly, glanced at the thrown gelt through the eyepiece, but did not have too many thoughts. After all, this was a gift belonging to the Emperor's direct gift to the Primarch. It was not a precious object that a chapter master like him could covet at all. Not long after, everyone quickly left the underground. They first went to the forge factory on Second Sun Island to let a large number of automatic servo robots quickly repair the scarred Terminator armor. Then, Roche and others temporarily returned to the base for repairs. During this period, Tiberius suggested to Roche again, if the Primarch needed to obtain more throne gelts, then the Carcharodons chapter was willing to assist the Primarch in fighting again. However, Roche, after thinking for a moment, told the other party clearly. It was not that he was unwilling to lead everyone to continue fighting, but that the remaining support missions were too difficult. Even if he brought a whole mechanized corps, it would be difficult for them to survive if they went now. Moreover, exchanging the sacrifice of more Carcharodons chapter battle brothers for the Primarch's own interests was never Rock's fighting style. What's more, the Carcharodons chapter belonged to the sons of Corax, not Rock's own chapter sons. Therefore, Tiberius's proposal was rejected by Roche very simply. So, the Carcharodons spent the rest of their time. Basically, they were quietly waiting for the arrival of the return time. They only occasionally went to the gang dogs venue for some intense combat training, leaving the onlookers gang dogs dumbfounded. Taking this opportunity, Tiberius and Roche also began to discuss how the two sides should effectively communicate and cooperate in the future and many other things. And as time continued to pass, the day for the Carcharodons to return to the Void Fleet finally arrived, outside the circular plaza, along the corridor. Rows of refined gold containers, each 5 meters wide, 4 meters high, and over 30 meters long, nearly filled the entire space. At this moment, a large number of refined gold containers were sequentially bound together by a single chain of Antarctic vibranium, as thick as a bowl. The chain extended to the towering figure clad in Terminator armor, wrapping around it several times. This scene, reminiscent of a freight train, prompted both Rourke and Iron Man David, who were standing by, to prioritize the expansion of this area once again. Including the manufacturing materials of the refined gold containers themselves and the goods inside, they were essentially the resources and equipment most lacking in the Carcharodons Astra chapter. Millions of rounds of bolter ammunition and tons of high-explosive grenades. 500 standard bolt guns and 500 storm bolt guns. Thousands of replacement ceramide armor components, and 50 complete sets of power armor. In addition, Rourke had searched the gaps in the containers and forcefully stuffed in 300 to 400 Antarctic vibranium power swords. Every space in these refined gold containers was packed to the brim. As for large-scale supplies like food, Rourke planned to use the diplomacy interface to directly transport them to the Carcharodons Astra chapter's ships. He had just discovered that self-produced supplies in large quantities could be completely extracted into the resource storage page. This would save the Carcharodons from having to carry them back bit by bit like ants moving house. Meanwhile, the Astartes honor guard, laden with various ammunition boxes, deliberately stood at the edge of the plaza, far from the chapter master. This was one of the results of a temporary discussion between Tiberius and Rourke. Mainly, Tiberius wanted to try leaving 5 Astartes honor guard behind as a contribution and honor to protect Primarch Rourke. Of course, this was just a small experiment. If the 5 Astartes honor guard could not stay and had to leave with Tiberius, then carrying as much ammunition and supplies as possible would not be a loss. Soon after, Tiberius, having adjusted his posture, slightly tilted his metal helmet. He gazed through his visor at Rourke standing beside him, and said in a deep voice, "Primarch, if the honor guard truly cannot stay for long, I will immediately have the chief librarian send you some of the war resources you currently lack upon my return. I hope you will not disdain the Carcharodons' gift." Tiberius, being able to occasionally summon you Carcharodons to help fight is already a rare gift. Rourke, with a calm expression, subconsciously revealed a smile, and he shook his head and said, "Of course, if you could send some of your ancient vehicles that you cannot repair and are close to being scrapped for us to analyze and manufacture, that would also be a rare good thing." Rourke's words had just fallen. Tiberius slightly tilted his metal helmet. However, at this moment, just as he was about to say something, crackle, accompanied by a burst of ear-piercing sound of space shattering. A spatial rift from the Carcharodons' fleet suddenly appeared within everyone's field of vision. Immediately following, a psychic echo from the Carcharodons' chief librarian constantly reverberated in everyone's ears. "Chapter Master Tiberius, please return as soon as possible. Not only will my psychic power not last much longer, but the chapter's next war is imminent and requires your immediate return to preside over the overall situation. At this moment, Tyberos seemed to have returned to his identity as the Carcharodon's chapter master. He silently nodded his helmet vigorously towards Rourke in the distance. Then, his massive body, wrapped in Antarctic vibranium chains, suddenly strode forward. The Antarctic vibranium chains, sequentially binding countless refined gold containers, were stretched straight by his immense power, also emitting bursts of ear-piercing metallic friction sounds. The next second, Tyberos, along with countless refined gold containers, vanished from the circular plaza in the blink of an eye, not even having reached the front of the spatial rift. Almost at the same time, each of the Astartes honor guard, trying to stay as far away from the spatial rift as possible, also noticed their towering bodies gradually becoming blurred. They helplessly waved their hands in Rourke's direction, making the Aquila salute. Subsequently, the Astartes honor guard, carrying a lot of ammunition and supplies, also completely disappeared from the circular plaza. Buzzing. In an instant, the spatial rift rapidly closed, plunging the entire brightly lit circular hall into complete silence. Tisk, I knew it wouldn't be easy to exploit the simulator's loopholes. I originally thought that if the honor guard could be left behind, then after successfully establishing contact with a chapter each time, having their chapter master come over casually would allow me to keep their honor guard. In this way, a Terminator chapter temporarily cobbled together could be used by me. Rourke, squinting his eyes, subconsciously let out a sigh. He muttered to himself. Subsequently, he opened the simulator in front of the Iron Man. He discovered that on the diplomacy interface, the logo pattern for the Carcharodon's Astra chapter had temporarily turned gray and was unusable. Open black lens bracket extraterrestrial Carcharodon's Astra chapter, ship-based chapter close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket chapter reputation, revered close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket current attitude, loyal close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket chapter master, Tyberos close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket chapter support. Astartes Combat Squad cannot be summoned. Astartes Combat Company cannot be summoned. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. An Astartes Combat Squad can be summoned once every Terra month, with a stay duration of 13 hours. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket note. An Astartes Combat Company requires the consumption of a large amount of reputation and massive resources to be successfully summoned, and once there is a large number of Astartes casualties, it will permanently reduce a portion of the chapter's reputation limit and loyalty level, with a stay duration of 13 days. Close black lens bracket. Rourke, squinting his eyes, quickly scanned the note text above. He casually selected a large amount of food supplies that he had prepared in advance in the resource storage page. For example, protein energy bars that could sustain 500,000 people for 1 to 2 years. And all the harmless corpse starch that he never used among all the supplies, he sent to the Carcharodons. However, just as Rourke, having completed the supply mission, was about to close the simulator and leave this place with Iron Man David, a teleportation request from the Carcharodon's Astra chapter once again arrived on the simulator's page. So fast. Oh, the time flow rates of both sides may not be the same. Perhaps the Carcharodons have already completed a war over there. Realizing this, Rourke unhesitatingly granted the other party's teleportation request. Buzzing. The next second, accompanied by yet another spatial rift that suddenly appeared on the circular plaza. A Contemptor dreadnought, 5 meters tall and still dripping with ice shards, crashed onto the metal floor. Progenitor, Edico. Greetings, Primarch. Rorschach never expected that Tyberos would send a dreadnought. What he originally wanted were those extremely precious ancient vehicles from the Carcharodon's chapter. Even if they couldn't be mass-produced, they could be used to bring more inspiration and ancient technology to Redditus and the others. At this moment, Rorschach, in his power armor, stepped forward. He first expressed his gratitude to the Carcharodon's chapter in his Primarch identity to first founder Edico. Then, Rorschach also indicated to the other party. He could help him completely leave this dreadnought iron coffin. The healing abilities of the panacea were enough to allow him to survive. However, first founder Idiko did not agree to Rorschach's request. He slowly shifted his heavy steps. A metal claw, powerfully rotating, took down a huge metal box several meters long from behind, and gently placed it in front of Rorschach. While Rorschach, under the other party's silent gaze, lifted the heavy lid on the metal box with a puzzled expression. In the next second, even Rorschach couldn't help but widen his eyes at what was inside, and gasped. Primarch, Chapter Master Tyberos deliberately sent you a piece of war heritage, a bipolar torpedo. Compared to this big guy, even I am just a free gift. Also, if it's not necessary, I still don't want to leave this dreadnought iron coffin. I know that the Primarch has a way to make me stand up again, but I'm afraid that when I enjoy too much peace and tranquility, and once again return to the dreadnought, my entire will completely collapse. First founder said to Rorschach in a low voice. Therefore, Rorschach, with a solemn expression, immediately ordered Iron Man David to store the bipolar torpedo in a more hidden place, and forbade anyone, including Redditus, from approaching. At the same time, he also asked Iron Man David to inform Redditus to prepare a stasis field to house this dreadnought veteran. However, just after Iron Man David, carrying the bipolar torpedo, quickly left the circular plaza, a red metal amulet, only the size of a palm, was suddenly thrown out of the observation window of the dreadnought armor. In the next second, Rorschach, with quick hands and eyes, caught this extremely ancient-looking metal amulet. He squinted his eyes and asked softly, First founder Idiko, what is this thing? This is an ancient red amulet that Chapter Master accidentally obtained, which can forcibly control mechanical creations. It should have a certain control effect on Iron Men. Tyberos asked me to convey a sentence to you, that is, it is never wrong to be wary of others. You don't have to use it, but the necessary countermeasures must be in place. Tyberos is thoughtful, I will remember this gift. Rorschach shook his head slightly and said with emotion. Afterwards, he led first founder Idiko to kneel and pray to the Emperor statue, and then left the circular plaza. Dash 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 dash. Buzzing. A large number of automated servo robots inside the forge factory quickly busied themselves. After they successively measured the volume and appearance data of the Contemptor Dreadnought mecha, they immediately carefully adjusted and maintained this ancient metal coffin. At the same time, Master Connors, who had not left the laboratory for a long time, was also pulled over by Rorschach to settle the Dreadnought mecha. Although first founder Idiko was unwilling to leave the Dreadnought, at least, the other party should be able to sleep comfortably. Therefore, under the guidance of Master Connors, a large amount of panacea, diluted countless times, was still injected into the body of the first founder. Even if the weak medicinal effect could not regenerate severed limbs, at least the serious injuries in the other party's body that needed the dreadnought iron coffin to maintain for a long time would be gradually repaired. Soon after, Redditus, facing the dreadnought veteran, no longer had much of the arrogance of the Mechanicus. Respectfully invited the other party into the prepared stasis field. Therefore, the first founder, who had never enjoyed similar treatment, also fell into a long-term sleep with a more positive and upward attitude. And after completing all this work, the first founder Idiko in the stasis field will be stored deeper in the Twin Islands base. Together with the bipolar torpedo that is enough to destroy a planet, they will become a war heritage in Rorschach's hands. Of course, if it is not necessary. Rorschach is also unwilling to wake the other party again, and even the bipolar torpedo will be used as an ultimate means to deter the enemy. Afterwards, Rorschach took the opportunity to ask Master Connors about the research progress on Gene Seed. Master Connors immediately perked up. He first told Rorschach about the various wonderful things about Gene Seed, such as the gene structure like virus replication, and the various growth hormones secreted according to the body development level, etc. Then, Master Connors also sighed to Rorschach about the difficulty of completely reverse engineering a gene seed. Those gene seeds from the star phantoms had basically lost their cell activity. At most, Connors could only familiarize himself with the overall structure of the Astartes by dissecting some Astartes corpses and gene seeds. If he wanted to cultivate a real gene seed, then he would not only need more biological materials, but also fresh gene seeds. Regarding this, Rorschach told Master Connors to be patient. He would find a way to get some gene seeds. Even after the teleportation experiment with the Carcharodons succeeds, and there are not many hidden dangers. Maybe he could send more people to the chapter to become a real apothecary. Dash 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 dash. Soon after, Master Connors walked excitedly towards his own laboratory. Obviously, the pie that Rorschach drew for him aroused great interest in the other party. After Rorschach said hello to Redditus, he also drove the power armor and left the forge factory. In the next period of time, he will randomly select a suitable team from the gang dogs to conduct teleportation experiments with the Carcharodons chapter. The ultimate purpose is to test the threat level of chaos corruption. If everything goes well, only then can he completely rest assured to send Master Connors over, so that the other party can learn the profound knowledge related to gene seed. Otherwise, he would rather continue to fight relying on the Intellectus Militarum and the occasionally summoned Astartes, and would not pay the unnecessary casualties and losses of core personnel. More than 10 minutes later, Rorschach drove the power armor back to his private room. He had already decided to conduct the next enhancement simulation. It was also time to increase his individual combat ability. Emperor protects. Rorschach chose a suitable posture and sat on the edge of the metal bed, silently completing the prayer to the Emperor. Then, he opened the simulator without hesitation, and casually took out a thrown gelt and threw it into the air. Ding! Open black lens bracket simulation starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket current available identities. Space Wolf Bloodclot Webway Comorig Escaping Prison Cypher Lord Webway Unknown Area Speeding Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Please select an identity to descend into close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. If refused, a random descent will occur. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Identity selection refused. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Simulation starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have descended into the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Time, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Location, Gloriana class battleship Red Tears. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have successfully descended onto a ship corridor. Faint red light from overhead constantly reflects between your gray-white short hair. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You lower your head slightly and notice that you are wearing that set of blue painted speed-type power armor, with the plasma revolver's furnace core inserted at your waist. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At the same time, you are gripping tightly in your palm the blood scythe that was not initially beside you at the start of the simulation. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You subconsciously blink your cyan wolf eyes. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Just as you are feeling somewhat puzzled by this, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Who are you? Are you an Astartes from the 13th Legion? But why are you on the Red Tiers? An Astartes wearing blood red artificer power armor suddenly appears behind you, questioning you in a low voice. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. That paint scheme. Blood Angels. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You slowly activate your power armor, turning around to look back. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You take a deep breath and show the other party signs of your lack of hostility. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Battle brother, where is this? I'm asking for the specific year. You ask the other party in a low voice. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Perhaps your calm emotional expression reassured the other party. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Or perhaps the Ultramarines' good reputation made the other party subconsciously lower their guard. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The Great Crusade Era, M31, Year 5. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The Blood Angel Astartes in front of you hesitated slightly, but still told you everything. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. I understand. Did you just say that this is the Red Tears? That is, your Blood Angel's flagship. You mutter to yourself. Then, calculating from the timeline, there's still time. Horus's rebellion has only just begun to brew. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Instantly, you widen your eyes and roar at the now alert Blood Angel, staring at him intently. Where is Primarch Sanguinius? Take me to see him. This is extremely urgent. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. How dare you directly call our father's name? Who exactly are you, heretic? The Blood Angel not far from you seems to have noticed your strangeness. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. He draws an ancient power sword from his power armor's waist and points it at you, launching a ferocious charge without hesitation. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. I am. You subconsciously let out a sigh, swallowing the words you were about to say back down. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your expression indifferent. You activate your speed-type power armor and step forward, the blood side held tightly in your palm already swinging repeatedly. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Clang. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Accompanied by an extremely crisp sound of metal breaking, the ancient power sword that the Blood Angel violently chopped down at you with was easily cut off by the blood scythe's sharp blade. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At the same time, your power fist, which you had just raised. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket was also quickly launched with the powerful thrust of the elbow thrusters, heavily landing on the other party's metal helmet. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In less than a round, with the Blood Angel collapsing with a bang. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This unfamiliar Astartes Marine was completely defeated by your passive counterattack. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You activate your speed-type power armor and stomp down violently, a heavy mag boot heavily trampling on the front of the other party's chestplate, preventing him from wanting to roll over and continue fighting. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. I am the 22nd Primarch created by the Emperor. I have a major matter involving the future of the entire galaxy, and even the life and death of the human race, that I need to see Sanguinius about. Where is he now? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You ask the Astartes under your feet in a low voice. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Cough, that's impossible. The Imperium only has 19 Primarchs in total. Moreover, as a son of the human emperor, how could a Primarch's physique be so weak? Diminutive. The fearless Blood Angel lowly roars at you through his metal helmet, gritting his teeth. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Bang. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your expressionless face twitches as you swing the blood scythe in your palm. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Using the side of the green light-infused sharp blade to heavily strike the Blood Angel's metal helmet, counting it as a small punishment for the other party's mockery of your physique. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Son of an angel. I'm not in the mood to joke with you right now. The revolver at my waist is Primarch Vulcan's personal sidearm, and I can only prove my identity by meeting Sanguinius. Even if you think I'm just a fake Primarch, according to your father's combat power, are you still afraid of me? What are you worried about? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You say, your face serious and stern, your cold gaze looking down at the other party, trying to persuade him. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Fine. Even if I temporarily believe that you are a true Primarch. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. But Lord Sanguinius is not currently on the Red Tiers. He is currently leading most of the Legion's sons to the Cygnus Prime. Even if you want to see him, you will have to wait for our Legion to return in triumph. At this moment, the Blood Angel, who was in a state of hesitation, seemed to have made a final decision, and he explained to you in a hurried tone. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. However, when you accidentally heard the other party say the name Cygnus Prime. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A very vague and hazy fragment of memory flashed through your mind like a bolt of lightning. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Crap. The red tears is about to crash. Your captain has already been corrupted by damned chaos. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You subconsciously let out an angry roar at the confused other party. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You unhesitatingly move away the mag boot that was suppressing the blood angel, and, carrying the blood scythe in your palm, activate your speed-type power armor and run towards the bridge as fast as you can. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Wait. You, stop right there. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Just at this moment, the blood angel, who quickly rolled over and jumped up, also followed behind you without hesitation, shouting at you in a tone of doubt and amazement. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The flagship's captain, Athena, is a mortal navy admiral with an incredibly resilient will. Even we blood angels have to treat her with respect. How could she betray our father so easily? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, because damned chaos corruption never makes sense. Hey, battle brother from the blood angels. I need you to believe me once. Even if it's just this once. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, and afterwards, your own dad, Sanguinius, will definitely be proud of you. Trust me. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You continue to dash forward, activating your speed-type power armor, while also shouting loudly at the unfamiliar blood angel behind you without turning your head. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Sanguinius above. I must have had a bloodthirst attack to believe your pack of lies. You're fucking running the wrong way. To the left. To the left. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Also, remember my name. I'm not called Hay. My name is Astartes. Close black lens bracket. Astartes, the blood angel, constantly guided and adjusted your course. The two of you, like two metal trains running side by side, desperately sprinted along the intricate ship corridors towards the bridge. Along the way, several blood angel combat squads responsible for guarding the Red Tier's flagship discovered your reckless traces. Reacting swiftly, they originally intended to step forward and stop you, a complete stranger. However, upon Astartes' loud reprimand, they unhesitatingly followed you, also sprinting at full speed. Soon after, you and Astartes had just stepped into the metal corridor located outside the bridge. You immediately saw the bridge showing signs of a large-scale riot, and countless mortal navy personnel running towards the bridge for support. Damn it, you were right. Astartes murmured in a heavy tone. The next moment, with a swift raise of his ceramite gauntlet, the several Astartes squads that had been following behind you unhesitatingly charged towards the bridge, where the sounds of lascannon fire and mortal bolter gunfire erupted. You, with a grim expression, held the blood scythe in your palm and ran swiftly forward. At this moment, the metal floor of the bridge was already covered in blood and littered with incomplete corpses, and the surrounding precision instruments were in a state of chaos. Countless servitors, temporarily malfunctioning, were constantly refreshing a large amount of green gibberish, and their bodies occasionally convulsed violently. Each brave mortal navy soldier was either torn into pieces of flesh by uncontrolled psychic power, or accidentally killed by stray shots such as lascannons. And in the center of the entire bridge, the female captain Athena, whose height and build had vaguely twisted and changed, was forcefully gripping the fragile body of a navigator, wantonly unleashing the surging psychic power from the navigator's body towards the mortal navy personnel who were trying to besiege her. I hear the warp singing to me. How beautiful that song is. Even Slanesh has generously opened their great heart to me, and I can't suppress that charming KG and GC, listen. Why don't you listen? Ha 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 ha. Captain Athena couldn't help but let out bursts of seductive laughter, her voice overlapping, sounding like both a man and a woman, and countless purple blood began to continuously overflow from her lower body, seeping through her naval officer's uniform. At this moment, several Blood Angel combat squads that had rushed into the bridge quickly raised their bolters and pulled the trigger fiercely at the female captain Athena, who had just turned her gaze. "Oh, the esteemed 22nd Primarch, have you also descended?" "Oh dear, Slanesh asked me to convey a long-awaited greeting to you. They are very interested in that pure emotion you hide in your heart. Moreover, soon, you may personally experience Slanesh's charming blessing, ha ha ha." However, the female captain Athena, corrupted by chaos, before being completely blasted into pieces of flesh and blood by countless bolter rounds, still spoke the last words to you in a tone of undulating malice, her expression enraptured. At this moment, it was not only you who heard it. Even the people present vaguely confirmed your Primarch identity through the mad ravings of the Chaos Worshipper. Thus, before the shattered pieces of flesh and blood on the female captain had completely landed, led by the Blood Angel Azkaelan, almost all the Blood Angel Astartes, as well as the mortal navy who had just survived, knelt on one knee in your direction, uttering the most loyal voice. The Blood Angels Legion Imperial Navy pays homage to the 22nd Primarch. You narrowed your azure wolf eyes slightly, subconsciously scanning the people in front of you. You took a deep breath and immediately threw the Slaneshi worshippers' verbal harassment completely out of your mind. "Can you immediately contact Sanguinius?" You asked the surrounding people in a low voice, your gaze also falling on Azkaelan, whom you met first. This Primarch, just before you arrived at the bridge, Lord Sanguinius had already launched a devastating attack with the Blood Angels on the Macrabian shrine on the main planet. I think the angels will destroy the threat of the demons in the name of the Emperor and completely recover this planet. At this moment, a young man who looked like an executive officer hesitated slightly, but still stood up and said to you, "But according to my memory, this battle faced by you Blood Angels has never been as simple as demonic contamination. Perhaps you don't know yet, but I can clearly tell you that the leader of the Great Crusade, Warmaster Horus, has been corrupted by chaos, thus betraying our Emperor, and there are also 8 Primarchs who have participated in this great heresy that is about to sweep the galaxy. The battle on Cygnus Prime is a trap deliberately set by Warmaster Horus to lure Sanguinius away. Those warped chaos demons have always been the most relied upon evil force by the traitor Primarchs." You said slowly to the people in front of you in a low voice. Then, you, anxious and impatient, did not give everyone more time to digest this bombshell news. You immediately ordered Azkaelan to gather all the Blood Angels in the entire flagship who were willing to follow you to participate in a tragic battle. You will personally lead Sanguinius's sons to Cygnus Prime to provide necessary support to the Angel Primarch. Now, Sanguinius may face a double ambush from the Slaneshi Greater Demon, Kyrus the Perverse, and the Khorne Greater Demon, Kabanda. Although you knew that the other party would definitely return in triumph. But you also couldn't be sure whether your arrival would cause a greater butterfly effect. You must firmly control the development of a part of the war situation in your hands, and use it to leverage the Horus heresy. Soon after, 3 veteran squads of Blood Angels quickly gathered in front of you. On the one hand, they believed in your loyal identity as an Imperial Primarch, and on the other hand, they were also to rescue their father, Sanguinius. You gripped the blood scythe in your palm tightly. Then, you scanned the Blood Angels in front of you one by one with those azure wolf eyes that had no emotional fluctuations. In this battle ahead, the difficult battle situation that everyone will face will inevitably make most of you unable to return to the flagship unscathed, but I can clearly tell you that my purpose here is to try my best to reverse the ultimate fate of Sanguinius and your Blood Angels. Although, besides fighting more desperately than you, I really have no other way. However, I firmly believe that the Blood Angels Legion will not disappoint me. And will not shame your father. For the Emperor and Sanguinius. Let us not fail the blood of Sanguinius. You suddenly raised the blood scythe in your palm and roared loudly at the crowd. Blood Angels, never fail the blood of Sanguinius. Thank you for your support. Countless terrifying attacks from laser arrays and macrocannon arrays poured through the frigid void surrounding the Cygnus Prime like fine rain. Even more terrifying lance strikes repeatedly burst forth from the fleets of both sides, threatening to obliterate their targets with the slightest miscalculation. If one could observe from the void's plane, the ultimate victor of this void battle would undoubtedly be the Imperial Navy. The vast majority of the traitorous enemy ships had either been completely destroyed or were heavily surrounded by the Navy's frigates or cruisers, unable to mount any further resistance. Before long, the Gloriana-class battleship, Red Tears, almost spanning half the battlefield, slowly began to maneuver its immense metallic hull once more towards the orbit of the main planet. Upon reaching orbit, under the close escort of hundreds of Fury interceptors, 3 red drop pods, carrying you and the veteran squad, were violently ejected from the flagship's lower decks, rapidly descending towards the atmosphere of Cygnus Prime. Rumble. After the drop pods, like descending meteorites, crashed heavily to the ground, scattering countless pieces of rubble. The doors of the drop pods instantly exploded outwards. The next moment, you, with an ancient iron halo affixed above your power pack and a red metal helmet back on your head, rapidly activated your mag boots, and were the first to charge out of the drop pod. Immediately following, the 15-man strong Sanguinary Guard veteran squad also rushed out of the drop pod, quickly gathering behind you. You stood in place, subconsciously tightening your grip on the glaive encarmine in your hand. Through your helmet's visor, you swiftly scanned the surrounding scene. You had now successfully arrived at the location where Primarch Sanguinius led the initial Sanguinary Guard vanguard. If this place was once a considerably prosperous human city, then what lay before you now was only corpses and ruined buildings everywhere. Countless mortal remains, completely devoured or sacrificed by chaos demons, scattered human bones lay upon the city streets stained with black blood, almost forming a carpet of bones extending into the distance. In the streets not far away, 20 or so Mastodon heavy transport vehicles, along with many Stormhawk interceptors, were burning fiercely on the ravaged ground, constantly billowing thick smoke. Within a radius of dozens of meters around these burning vehicles were a large number of incomplete corpses belonging to the Sanguinary Guard. And spent bolter shells scattered all over the ground, along with a Legion banner, tattered but still standing, constantly telling you everything that had just happened. Just then, you seemed to hear the deep, malevolent laughter of the Bloodthirster, Kabanda, and the simultaneous, furious roars of countless Sanguinary Guard. You instantly sensed the thick sorrow contained within the battle cries echoing through the sky, as well as the uncontrollable, maddening rage. I'm a step too late. Has Sanguinius already been injured and fallen unconscious? You couldn't help but murmur from inside your helmet, filled with doubt. Everyone, follow me. Huh. Just as you retracted your gaze and were about to lead the Sanguinary Guard veteran squad behind you towards the true battlefield, you immediately noticed something amiss with everyone. At this moment, you seemed to see wisps of pale red aura from the air constantly seeping into their power armor, and as the amount of pale red aura continued to increase, you even clearly noticed the gradually heavier breathing sounds inside their helmets, as well as the extreme craving for blood from the depths of their hearts. Damn it! The Blood God's scheme is to completely stimulate the genetic flaws of the Blood Angels Legion through various means. The more they are angered by Sanguinius's painful experience, the more they become a force driving the complete fall of the entire Legion. Gritting your teeth, you violently shook your metal helmet. You quickly activated your speed-enhanced power armor, retreating backwards, the glaive encarmine tightly gripped in your hand, ready to counterattack at any moment. The red thirst is a genetic flaw that the Blood Angels Legion has been unable to completely cure since its creation. It is also one of the greatest concerns of Sanguinius, the Primarch of the Blood Angels Legion. Now, this genetic flaw has been exploited by the Bloodthirster, Kabanda, becoming the mastermind pushing the entire Legion onto the bloody path. You had no choice but to temporarily distance yourself from these Astartes on the verge of losing control. Because Blood Angels who have fully entered the Red Thirst will transform into indiscriminate killing machines. Devoid of reason, they will indiscriminately taste the corpses of enemies or the blood of allies, until their sole obsession gradually fades or their bodies are destroyed, marking the complete end. Clang! Just then, as you were rapidly retreating, you accidentally collided with the still-standing Legion banner, and a drop of viscous blood, shaken from the tattered banner, arced through the air and splattered on your helmet's visor. Blood. I wonder if the Emperor's blood within me can suppress this level of psychic contamination. In an instant, a bold yet crazy idea suddenly surfaced in your mind. You abruptly stopped your heavy steps. You took a deep breath and, with a backhand, aimed the sharp edge of the glaive encarmine at one of your ceramite gauntlets. Chhh. With an unwavering motion, strands of shimmering, viscous, golden emperor's blood quickly seeped out of the broken ceramite palm, dripping onto the ground below. Immediately afterwards, you casually picked up the 3-meter-long tattered banner beside you, and vigorously smeared emperor's blood all over it with your bleeding hand. The emperor may still exist in the present, but may not be able to respond to my silent prayers. But the future god emperor, comparable to a warp god, probably was, is, and ever shall be. Through the visor, you saw that the emperor's blood flowing from your palm had almost completely stained the entire banner into a pale golden blood-colored flag. And as your injured hand tightly gripped the cold metal flagpole of the blood-colored banner, strands of extremely faint but still stubbornly burning psychic flames suddenly enveloped the entire blood-colored banner. Your emperor's blood had actually begun to burn continuously under the ignition of an unknown power. As for whether my crazy idea will succeed, it all depends on this. You abruptly raised the blood-colored banner that was burning in midair with your left hand, and held the green glowing glaive encarmine in your right hand. You quickly looked up at those sanguinary guard veterans who had already drawn their melee weapons and were planning to pounce on you, and couldn't help but let out a deafening battle cry. For the Emperor, you unhesitatingly activated the speed-type power armor and charged forward. The thruster nozzles located behind the power backpack suddenly erupted with dazzling brilliance, enhancing your charging speed. You, like a blue lightning bolt, brandished the Emperor's blood banner, which was burning out of thin air, and collided head-on with the veteran squad of the Blood Angels. Instantly, the faint red aura clearly visible in your field of vision seemed to be largely dispelled by the psychic flames from the Emperor's blood banner, quickly waking up the Blood Angels veterans who had fully entered the bloodlust. Primarch, we were just gradually returning to normal. The men immediately stopped their advance, instinctively lowered their melee weapons, and stared at you and the Emperor's blood banner in your hand, which resembled a golden torch. Brothers, there's no time to explain. Gather your unwavering will, grip your weapons, and follow my lead to continue the charge. Seeing that your insane idea was proving remarkably successful, you quickly steered the power armor, changing the direction of your charge, and shouted loudly to the others without looking back. Your two magnetic boots heavily stomped on the bone carpet composed of scattered bones, and you sped towards the real battlefield further away. The Blood Angels veterans, who had completely returned to their normal state, unhesitatingly gripped the melee weapons in their hands, choosing to follow closely behind you. As the distance to the battlefield continued to decrease, angry roars from the Blood Angels, like demonic whispers, echoed in your ears. You instantly saw through your visor. Near a massive cathedral, or perhaps a bone temple, whose magnificent walls were completely covered in human bones. Flesh hounds with gaping maws and bloodletters wielding hellblades, along with numerous curvaceous Slaaneshi demonettes and seekers riding Slaaneshi steeds, were continuously attacking and slaughtering countless Blood Angels who had fallen into the bloodlust. Instantly, the shouts of the Khorne demons and the gasps of the Slaaneshi demons, the roar of bolters, and the grating sound of chainswords grinding their teeth, all rang out one after another, seemingly blending into a terrifying yet alluring symphony. You even inadvertently saw that many Blood Angels who had completely fallen into madness, even if they no longer had any weapons in their hands, would tear off their metal helmets, forcefully open their thick arms, and desperately hug any Slaaneshi demonette or unlucky bloodletter who dared to appear before them, devouring them. At the same time, a massive figure with terrifying fleshy wings was standing above the bone temple, seemingly leering down at all the chaos below. That was one of Khorne's greater demon, a bloodthirster, Kabanda. Soon after, you finally led the Blood Angels veteran squad to the outer edge of the battlefield. However, at this moment, the burning Emperor's blood banner, firmly gripped in your hand, instantly attracted the attention of most of the battlefield, like a beacon in the darkness. A portion of the Blood Angels closest to you seemed to gradually withdraw from their bloodlust state, successfully regaining their sanity. They were only confused for a moment before they reacted and quickly began a more arduous gathering operation towards your location. A large number of bloodletters also brandished their hellblades and charged head-on towards you. accompanied by a series of bolter explosions suddenly ringing out from behind you. The Blood Angels veterans launched an attack first. With the burning Emperor's blood banner in one hand and the blood scythe in the other, you also unhesitatingly launched a fierce charge towards the Khorne demons in front of you. In an instant, the green light-entwined blood scythe easily shattered a large number of Bloodletter's Hellblades. And the burning Emperor's blood banner, once again waved by you, completely plunged the surrounding Bloodletters into the terrifying fate of being burned to ashes, like a flame igniting gasoline. Even though the psychic flames on the Emperor's blood banner seemed very weak. But for these chaos demons, it was simply a cruel punishment comparable to tearing the soul. You charged into the depths of the battlefield alone. You ceaselessly wielded two terrifying weapons, wantonly hacking and slashing at the chaos demons before you like a true Primarch. And as you continued to charge forward, a considerable number of Blood Angels began to withdraw from their uncontrollable bloodlust state, gradually regaining their normal sanity. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, however, at this moment, accompanied by a burst of whistling sound tearing through the air. A massive metallic shadow quickly loomed over your head. Your beast-like instinct repeatedly triggered, you unhesitatingly dodged to the side, and conveniently used the burning Emperor's blood banner to sweep across a group of Slaaneshi demonettes swarming towards you, creating the necessary space for your next move. Rumble rumble rumble. The rubble and bones on the ground exploded violently, and a massive blood-red axe, comparable to the size of an Astartes, instantly landed near you. Little wolf cub. The feud between you and me is far from over. Even if my master Khorne favors you, it is difficult to quell the anger in my heart. Now, you either obediently submit to my master, or simply die. At this moment, accompanied by the howling wind constantly sweeping across the surrounding ground and ceramite armor, the bloodthirster Kabanda, repeatedly waving his huge fleshy wings, heavily landed before you with his blood-red body far exceeding that of a Primarch. The massive bloodthirster casually lifted the terrifyingly heavy blood-red axe, and the bone whip constantly burning with blood-red flames in his other claw pointed towards your metal helmet. Kabanda, you're such a chatterbox for a greater demon. Does your master know? You fearlessly met his gaze, retorting with a disdainful tone. Immediately afterwards, the magnetic boots on your feet stomped forcefully on the ground, slightly adjusting your fighting stance, and both hands firmly gripped the burning Emperor's blood banner and the blood scythe respectively. At this moment, you once again faced the bloodthirster Kabanda alone. Last time, your simulacrum might have been able to safely escape with the protection of the Emperor's power. But now, as a Primarch, you can only desperately fight the bloodthirster with the two terrifying weapons in your hands. Then die, foolish insect. In an instant, a bone whip burning with blood-red flames rapidly wrapped around your power armor. At the same time, the massive blood-red axe also slammed down towards the top of your head. In a flash of lightning, you take a deep breath. The burning Emperor's blood banner clutched in your palm is forcefully swept outwards. While directly blocking the coiling attack from the bone whip, the Emperor's blood continuously burning on the banner instantly extinguishes the crimson flames on the demonic weapon. Immediately following, before the crimson giant axe rushing down from above can fall heavily, you immediately activate the speed-type power armor to step forward, and then unhesitatingly unleash Shadow Step. Your entire being completely vanishes like a dark phantom beneath the massive shadow of the crimson giant axe. After the dark phantom swiftly cuts through the air, it heavily crashes down onto the ground behind the bloodthirster, Kabanda. Boom! The moment the heavy magnetic boots on your feet touch the bone-covered ground. Without any hesitation, you turn towards the rear and vigorously swing the blood scythe in your other palm. Swish, almost simultaneously, the bloodthirster Kabanda, who hasn't turned around yet, immediately reacts, and the pair of massive fleshy wings on its crimson back rapidly extend outwards. And like a pair of flexible limbs, they violently collide with the blood scythe's sharp blade. Chi. Instantly, the blood scythe, wreathed in green light, easily cleaves off most of the bloodthirster Kabanda's crimson fleshy wing like a hot knife through butter. Damn insect! At this moment, the injured bloodthirster suddenly raises its ugly, horned head and lets out a deafening roar towards the sky. Rather than saying it suffered some physical damage, it's more like its high and mighty pride has been greatly stimulated. However, just as you want to seize the opportunity before you and use the blood scythe's weapon properties to forcibly extract the Khorne Demon Prince's scarlet blood and weaken the opponent's combat power as much as possible, the bloodthirster Kabanda, who swiftly retracts the Crimson Giant Axe, unexpectedly rotates its massive crimson body without hesitation. It completely transforms itself into a terrifying crimson whirlwind, violently charging towards your direction. Rumble, rumble, gusts of fierce crimson wind sweep and shatter everything around. A large amount of rubble, gravel, and corpse bones that are swept up continuously impact your ceramite shell, emitting intense collision sounds. Intending to temporarily avoid the opponent's sharp edge, you can only once again use Shadow Step, your entire being turning into a dark phantom, swiftly falling towards a place far away from the attack range. However, the instant you just land, before you can adjust your entire body into a combat stance, a bone whip that has reignited with crimson flames unexpectedly streaks across the air, heavily striking the front of your ceramite breastplate like a battering ram. Crackle. In an instant, accompanied by the sudden failure of the iron halo defense barrier and countless scattered ceramite metal fragments flying away, a large amount of light golden blood violently gushes out from between the mouth and nose hidden inside your red helmet. At the same time, your entire body, along with the heavy power armor, is sent flying like a helpless blue baseball towards the bone-covered ground hundreds of meters away. You seem to fall into an extremely brief state of unconsciousness, but the violent collision caused by the power armor's backpack landing heavily quickly awakens your consciousness. You forcefully swallow a mouthful of the fishy, salty blood surging up in your throat. You grit your teeth and activate the power armor, which is emitting the sound of metal twisting, and use the burning Emperor's blood banner in your palm to barely support your broken body filled with painful sensations. You can inflict some damage on the Khorne Demon Prince by relying on divine weapons and unexpected attacks. But the opponent only needs to successfully hit you once to temporarily deprive you of all combat power. Not to mention, you are now facing one of the strongest greater demons under Khorne's command. At this moment, as your breathing rhythm becomes increasingly rapid, the medical life support system inside the speed-type power armor is quickly activated, and a large amount of liquefied panacea is injected into your body. You take another deep breath. You keenly perceive that the serious injuries in your body are rapidly recovering to their original state. You instantly decide to fight a war of attrition with the bloodthirster Kabanda. At least you can last for a while longer before the panacea in the medical life support system is completely exhausted. Worthy of the blood of Sanguinius, just at this moment, squads of Sanguinary Guard Astartes rapidly traverse the chaotic battlefield and successfully arrive near you. Having regained their rational state, they fearlessly wave the chainswords in their palms and launch a death charge towards the bloodthirster Kabanda, who is rushing and attacking. Even though these death angels are fundamentally unable to withstand the Crimson Giant Axe casually swung by the bloodthirster, the opponent's single strike will instantly turn an entire combat squad of Astartes into scattered pieces of flesh and blood on the spot. But they still roar in battle and violently charge towards the bloodthirster Kabanda with a near-sacrificial attack. Sanguinary Guard, I, as your Primarch, order you to immediately cease your charge. This is not a battle you can join. Quickly retreat from this place. All of you, come back. You subconsciously clench the burning Emperor's blood banner in your palm, and you can't help but shout loudly at the Sanguinary Guard who are successively rushing to their deaths. However, every Sanguinary Guard who converges from all directions does not listen to your orders at all. They still roar and launch a near-sacrificial offensive against the Khorne Demon Prince, also buying more time for your injuries to recover. At this moment, witnessing countless heroic sacrifices with your own eyes, you grit your teeth and remove the red metal helmet. With an incomparably ferocious expression, you loudly curse at the bloodthirster who is hacking at the Sanguinary Guard. You son of a bitch, Kabanda, if you have the guts, come at me. You motherfucker, come here. Before the words finish, you re-grip the battle flag and scythe in your two hands. You unhesitatingly activate the power armor with its shattered outer shell and launch an astonishing charge towards the bloodthirster Kabanda in front. And every time you take a step forward, strands of power that descend from nowhere but must be a blessing from Khorne rapidly enhance your body's strength and physical power. When you are only tens of meters away from the bloodthirster Kabanda, you grit your teeth and let out a low, furious roar. You quickly adjust the way you hold the burning Emperor's blood banner in your palm, and then use all the strength in your body to violently hurl it towards the opponent's massive crimson body. Taste this. Open black lens bracket poof poof poof. Close black lens bracket open black lens bracket. At this moment, you seem to see the faint psychic flames on the burning Emperor's blood banner suddenly surge. Open black lens bracket completely transforming the tattered battle flag into a dazzling golden flame spear. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket chiz chiz chiz. Close black lens bracket open black lens bracket accompanied by a buzzing vibration that cuts through the air and wisps of afterimages lingering in your vision. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket the burning Emperor's blood banner, like a golden flame spear, pierced straight through the bone whip that the bloodthirster Kabanda hastily brandished. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket and without any resistance, it deeply embedded itself into the opponent's blood-red chest. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Roar. Close black lens bracket open black lens bracket. At this moment, the bloodthirster Kabanda couldn't help but let out an extremely miserable and painful roar. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. It immediately raised a claw wrapped in layers of chains. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Then, enduring the psychic flames raging within its body and scorching its terrifying flesh, the bloodthirster Kabanda forcibly pulled out the burning Emperor's blood banner that was deeply embedded in its chest. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At the same time, casually discarding the extremely detestable burning Emperor's blood banner, and completely consumed by furious madness, the bloodthirster Kabanda immediately hurled the blood-red giant axe in its other claw towards your direction. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket buzz buzz buzz. Close black lens bracket open black lens bracket. Your reaction is extremely swift, and you are about to activate your damaged power armor to dodge. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. However, at this moment, strands of sudden purple chaos psychic energy abruptly bind your entire body in place. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket rendering you unable to move for a moment. You can only watch helplessly as the blood-red giant axe rapidly approaches you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Slaneshi Greater Demon. You subconsciously widen your blue wolf eyes, and can't help but let out a low roar filled with endless anger. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket rumble rumble. Close black lens bracket open black lens bracket just as your life is like a flickering candle, about to face death once again. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket within the ruins of a church on the edge of the battlefield. A burst of incomparably astonishing psychic energy erupts. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. It seems to be a sacrifice made at the cost of their lives by dozens of librarians from the Blood Angels. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In the next moment, a tall figure with large, pure white feathered wings on its back, wearing a suit of golden power armor, soars into the chaotic and turbid sky like a newly resurrected deity. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Then, this golden-haired, handsome, and cold giant forcefully hurls a golden spear with a teardrop-shaped tip towards your location. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Boom boom boom. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In a flash, the golden spear that rapidly pierced through the air successfully collided with Kabanda's blood-red giant axe, and forcibly smashed the opponent's huge weapon to the ground. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In an instant, the shockwave triggered by the collision of the two terrifying weapons instantly frees you from the Slaneshi Greater Demon's binding. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket accompanied by the choking smoke and countless flying gravel that have yet to settle around you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket having just broken free from the binding. You unhesitatingly activate your power armor and stride forward. And seize the golden spear that is embedded in the ground. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket with both hands gripping the two divine weapons powerful enough to harm a Khorne greater demon. You unleash a roar of defiance at the bloodthirster Kabanda, who is charging towards you madly. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket, for the Emperor. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. However, before you can activate your damaged power armor to launch a final desperate charge. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A pair of huge wings suddenly cuts through the sky above, belonging to the golden giant. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Like a true god descending to earth, it heavily impacts the bloodthirster Kabanda's blood-red body. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At the same time, the ornate power sword named the Red Terror Blade repeatedly slashes and pierces the Khorne greater demon's massive body like a torrential downpour, constantly tearing apart the opponent's flesh. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At this moment, Kabanda, the bloodthirster who was once invincible, has fallen into a miserable situation where it cannot fight back. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Demon of blood. If you truly come from the place humans call hell, then tell your kind that Sanguinius, son of the Emperor of Mankind, is sending you back. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You seem to hear a low roar from the golden giant in your ear. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You can barely make out the other party raising the Red Terror Blade high once again. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. No. I am not willing. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In an instant, accompanied by the bloodthirster Kabanda's angry roar that almost resounds throughout the entire battlefield. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. An ugly head with horns rolls violently into the air like a tattered balloon. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. And when the opponent's massive blood-red body falls heavily to the ground, it also signifies that half of the bloodthirster Kabanda's plot against the Blood Angels and their Primarch Sanguinius has been thwarted. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At this moment, gazing at the headless body of the Khorne greater demon slowly dissipating, you can't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Even the two divine weapons tightly gripped in your palm subconsciously droop to the ground, leaving two shallow grooves. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Little brother, now is not the time to relax your vigilance. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Just then, Primarch Sanguinius, gently flapping his pure white wings, quickly turns and strides towards you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The other party's massive body, over 3 meters tall, seems to carry an invisible aura that is suffocating, rushing towards you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You subconsciously take a deep breath. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You slightly widen your eyes, gaze at the other party's handsome face, and say, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. I am. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Little brother, I know who you are, and I also know why you have come. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At this moment, the handsome Sanguinius seems to blink his deep eyes that are as bright and beautiful as stars, and he says to you in a low voice, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Psychic prophecy has not only allowed me to see my ultimate fate, but has also unexpectedly foreseen your arrival. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. But your arrival is ultimately just a small ripple in the river of time, and there are always some things that even you cannot change. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Moreover, now is not a good time for you and me to talk. You see, those damn demons are attacking again. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Sanguinius's words make you abandon the idea of talking further. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You immediately turn your head and scan the surrounding battlefield, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A large number of strange and grotesque Slaaneshi demons are once again pouring out from the massive bone temple covered with countless human skeletons, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This has caused many blood angels who have not yet escaped the bloodlust to fall back into the encirclement of the chaos demons, and even those blood angels who have completely awakened have entered an extremely difficult state of bitter fighting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You shake your head violently, causing your head full of gray-white short hair to sway, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You unhesitatingly throw the spear of Telesto in your palm to Sanguinius, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You immediately activate your damaged power armor and step forward, picking up the Emperor's blood banner, whose psychic flames are about to be extinguished, from the skeletal ground once again, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You once again use the sickle-like blade to cut open the wound in your palm, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. While continuing to pour more Emperor's blood onto the tattered battle flag, you say without looking up, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Come on, Sanguinius, let us send the demons on their way together, close black lens bracket. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.